Joburg, Malema says that Brink only prioritized providing services in white-populated areas and neglected the black ones. Malema says he welcomes Moya's appointment.
The people of Hammanskraal, Soshanguve, Atteridgeville, Mamelodi, and Arankua have been neglected, left to live alongside illegal dump sites without clean and dependable water, while white suburbs were given maximum attention. Many of the suburbs dominated by white people are well maintained with working street lights, painted roads, and road signs that are well maintained. We call on the newly elected mayor to hit the ground running and deliver services to all the people of the city of Tshwane.
Activity in the manufacturing sector recorded a decrease in August. Stats SA says manufacturing production fell by 1.2% in August compared with the same time last year. The largest negative contributions were made by motor vehicles, parts and accessories, as well as basic iron and steel, metal products, and machinery. The largest positive contribution came from the food and beverages division. Nothando Makutulela reports.
Seasonally adjusted manufacturing production increased by 0.1% in the 3 months ended July 2024 compared with the previous 3 months. 4 of the 10 manufacturing divisions reported positive growth rates over this period. The largest positive contribution was reported for the basic iron and steel, non-ferrous metal products, and machinery division. While constant electricity supply of the past few months is a positive for the sector, challenges such as logistics constraints and low demand continue to weigh on manufacturers.
And Hurricane Milton has left more than 2 million homes and businesses without power after tearing its way across the U.S. state of Florida. The huge storm made landfall last night, bringing fierce 200 kilometers per hour winds. The BBC's Tom Bateman has more.
Around 2 million homes and businesses reported without power, and a big part of that has been power lines coming down, but also because of that, power generators exploding. But the other real big danger, and where we're hearing a lot about destruction, has been about the tornadoes that were unleashed, particularly on the Atlantic coast, on the other side from where the storm came in. Within the space of 20 minutes, reports of 17 suspected tornadoes.
The top story at 3 o'clock, it's now emerged that more than 70 matriculants from various schools across Gauteng have been admitted to hospital for suspected food poisoning. For SAFM News, Gemudupima Khalemele.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Nadal calls time on his career and Hugo Bruce calls for an improved Bafana Bafana performance against Congo. More details at 3:30.
Those who love the game say chess is the gymnasium of the mind. The world's top chess players will showcase exciting fast chess played among 6 teams in search of the ticket to the ultimate glory. This is the 2nd season of the Tech Mahindra Global Chess League. Catch the Global Chess League 2024 action from 3 to 12 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The reality is that 90% of South Africans don't save enough for retirement. This National Seniors Month, why not be part of the 10% who do? Choose an interest rate of up to 11.7% after 60 months with a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account. Anyone 55 and over can open one on the Money app in less than 2 minutes. Go to nedbank.co.za for more info. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
EFC 118 promises to be one of the most scintillating fight nights in recent memory, with 2 standout matchups. Fresh off his incredible run in The Ultimate Fighter, Rody Roots battles for the interim featherweight strap against deadly kickboxing specialist Ayanda Zwane, whilst the co-main event witnesses the return of the one and only Martin the Punisher Van Staden, who takes on fellow veteran Hanru the Bully Boda. EFC 118 from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So it's day 2 since I've returned to the show after a 3-week plus absence. And the question I often ask you, and I want you to think about it as I talk to you, what for you today moves the national pulse? Because everyone, wherever we are, wherever you are, wherever I am, we all have this thought about different things that drives the biggest issues in the country and the biggest issues around the world. Now, clearly around the world, if you're in the USA, it could well be that hurricane in America, around Florida and that area. But in South Africa, there are different sorts of hurricanes every single day. And the issue of the mayor, a new mayor replacing the old yesterday, certainly continues with Julius Malema, the EFF leader, pronouncing on it today. We'll play some sound bites of that conversation that he had later on, so look out for that. But that's not all. There are many, many issues to be concerned about. And one of them, I will just tell you just now, we'll chat to Peggy Serame, the Botswana Finance Minister, President of the Botswana ruling party, and she talks to us ahead of the Botswana election. That comes up pretty shortly. But let's start with, I think, well, it's fascinating, but it's also horrific in terms of what the story here is, right? So police in Limpopo arrested a fellow officer who allegedly killed 6 people for insurance claim purposes. So that's it, insurance claim, and 6 people allegedly killed. The officer stationed at the Senwar Baragwana police station allegedly claimed more than 10 million rands in that insurance payout. She had insured the lives of the 6 deceased and cashed out upon their murders. Okay, we'll comment on that in a second. Let me just say this much. You can comment, and you know that, 086 000 2032. As always, voice notes or text messages, 0614 104 107. And you can also tweet. Just use the hashtag The National Pulse when you're tagging SAFM Radio, and you can certainly tag me, Ashraf Garda. And as always, the shout out to you, wherever you are listening around the country, around the world. If you have a picture with your dial locked onto SAFM, whether it's radio or even on streaming live, just send us a picture, and you can also tweet it out. It'll be great to connect with you. Let's get then to that big story. Atlenda Mate with me, the SAPS national spokesperson. Appreciate you connecting to us on the National Pulse.
A very good afternoon to you and to the listeners.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say good afternoon. I would say the same thing to you as well. But it's clearly not a good afternoon in this case, where we find out about 6 people dying, and the allegation is that it's linked to a police officer.
An absolute disgrace, quite disappointing. You know, a police officer is someone the community holds in high regard. It is someone that is entrusted with the safety and security of communities. Now, to find a police officer involved in such heinous crimes, it's quite an absolute disgrace. And we are condemning it as the SAPS, but most importantly, it really shows our determination in rooting out any wrong and criminal elements from the system.
Well, tell us what happened in terms of rooting out these criminal elements. How did you, as the SAPS, get to know about? How did you find out about it?
So we were given information on her possible links to insurance-related fraud murders. So we immediately, months ago, roped in Captain Keshi Mabunda, who has expertise in solving similar cases. You'll recall he led the investigation into disgraced ex-police officer Rosemary Ndlovu, who's now in prison for 6 life sentences and an additional 200 years for a number of murders related to insurance fraud. So he collected and analyzed all data, worked closely with the insurance companies as well as the banks. And we found that she had actually insured and took out funeral policies, life policies, accidental life policy covers for these 6 people that are not even related to her. They were community members that had, trusted her. And most of them from, underprivileged backgrounds, destitute, some were mentally challenged, some were disabled. and 6 of them were killed. 1 shot and killed. 1 was burnt in a shack fire. 4 of them died as a result of blunt force trauma to the head. So all these 6 died under mysterious circumstances, but surprisingly, she was the beneficiary in all these victims, policies.
And can you say with certainty that, one is that she was behind the entire fraudulent plan or scheme, that's the one thing, but the other that she also physically killed the people that you've mentioned. I mean, she was directly involved in the killing as opposed to getting someone else to become an accomplice and do that.
Well, the information at hand is that she orchestrated their deaths because the paper trail tells us that the cash flows into her account. The first payment, I think, of 1.5 million was paid in 2019 after the first death, where this person was killed and thrown into a local dam in Polokwane. And the rest followed. All died under mysterious circumstances. She cashed in these policies and so on. So we working closely with the insurance companies, but I think one important element that we've raised with the insurance companies is that all these insurance companies and the banks that are offering these policies, they need to somehow be integrated. Their systems need to be integrated so that we are able to detect people that frequently cash out on policies, and so that you can assist the work of the police, but most importantly, that we can save more lives. I mean, 6 deaths, it's a lot.
Well, it certainly is. Well, it's not just even 1 death is a lot, but 6
one death is one
serial.
too many.
Absolutely. What about just a quick thought then in terms of what happens next year?
So what happens next is that she was being processed when I left Polokwane. She is expected to appear before the Polokwane District Court tomorrow, where she will be facing 6 counts of murder, about 17 of fraud. But investigations continue because we want to know who was assisting her. Was she working alone? No, we don't believe she was working alone. We do believe she's got accomplices. So we are continuing with the investigation. When I left Polokwane, 2 people were already called in to be questioned. So we will get feedback from the team whether or not these 2 will be arrested, and so our investigations continue, but internally our internal departmental processes unfold where an expeditious process where we speed up disciplinary proceedings and so on will unfold departmentally. So you will recall that Rosemary, as soon as we had learned of the cases that she was, the crimes that she was facing, she was immediately dismissed from the police service.
Absolutely. But yes, the last thing before I let you go. On the one hand, it talks about just the ability of the SAPS to nail someone who's committed a crime, even within the force. But it also then talks about a person who's within the police service who's able to commit the crime, which does then pose a question about the recruitment. What can you tell us about that very quickly?
Look, our recruitment processes are quite fair. We go through a rigorous process to recruit and train police officers. Somewhere along the line, while they are serving, something goes wrong. It talks a lot and puts their integrity into question. But we do have an anti-corruption unit that we had established in 2018 already that looks at detecting all these police officers that are involved in wrongdoing. And in the past 5 years, I think we've got 2,118 police officers that were dismissed, and some of them are facing, they are attending, various court for various misconduct and so on.
Let's leave it at that. I'll tell you what, maybe it's another conversation. The fact there's over 2,000 and a bit that has been dismissed over the last 8 years, that alone is a cause for serious concern. But maybe another conversation for some other time. Appreciate you giving us your thoughts. Athlenda Mathe, the SAPS national spokesperson. What do you make of that conversation and that issue regarding a police officer who's committed, well, allegedly a crime around insurance, and in doing that has knocked off a whole lot of people, and it's crazy. It's just a bizarre story. Give me your thoughts. Ultimately, that's a big issue that certainly moves the national pulse. Let's talk about Botswana right after this.
The ring personnel has been summoned to the Jade International Boxing Festival at Thaba Moshate in Burgersfort this Friday night. WBF Intercontinental Champion Mzansi's Agani Sambu collides with John Chua of Tanzania, while South Africa's Nosiwakase Dube confronts Chimwemwe Banda of Malawi in the International Female Junior Bantamweight bout. Meanwhile, Sfiso Tongane from Limpopo battles it out with KZN's Kanaiseni Mbogazi in the junior lightweight. Prince Ndlovu clashes with Congolese tough rock Blaise Mujinga. Catch more electrifying bouts of the Jade International Boxing Festival this Friday, 11 October at 7 p.m. Live on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 2 at 10:30 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This summer, we have extra large offers on Ford Ranger XL, XLT and Wildtrak from only $481,900 for a Ranger XL single cab 4x2. It's the extra large Ranger offer from only $481,900. Visit your nearest participating Ford dealer. Optional service plan included. While stocks last. T&Cs apply.
Amatax ladies are looking for high-level mechanisms to stop the dominance of Masandawana ladies, while the queens of Klorkop want to emphasize that they are Banyana by style and will want to win in style. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC on Saturday, 12 October at 3 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, as part of our Global Watch now, we chat to Peggy Serame, who's currently the Botswana Finance Minister, as well as President of the ruling party's Botswana Democratic Party's Women's League. But there's also an issue about an election coming up, and that's what we're going to be talking about right away. So, Peggy, I appreciate you giving us your time. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
So it's an interesting thing. I mean, there's an election coming up in your country in the next few weeks, in fact. Perhaps give us a scene setter in terms of what do you expect?
Hello, could you say that again?
I was saying, give us a scene setter in terms of what do you expect coming out of that election, your hopes and aspirations.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, you know, like you said, I'm the chairperson of the BDP Women's Wing, and we are standing for elections as the Botswana Democratic Party, which is the ruling party. There are 61 constituencies in Botswana. We are contesting for all the 61, and we do expect to win the majority. And, except that the only thing that bothers us as women is that from the ruling party, out of the 61 constituencies, it's only 7 women candidates who are standing for elections. I am also contesting in one constituency called Good Hope Market, not very far from South Africa, because I come from a village on the border of South Africa. So I'm also contesting for the elections. I'm standing with three other contestants who all happen to be late, but I do expect to come out the winner.
Okay, but you're not contesting the presidency, are you? You're contesting a constituency.
No,
right?
no.
Just checking, yeah.
Yeah, not there yet.
Would you said not there yet. I mean, would that be part of your aspirations, considering the point you already made? There's such a low representation of women in the Botswana Parliament on the one hand, but then you hold a key position as the finance minister.
Yes, I think we're not there yet. I hope that at some point we'll see 50% of Parliament being women having won the election. I came in through the specially elected nomination ticket, so I'm currently a specially elected member of Parliament and the Minister of Finance, which is a very key position. But of course, for you to be Minister of Finance, other than you being a member of Parliament, you must have the qualifications and the experience to be able to do that job. And of course, as Minister of Finance, the position that attracts a lot of attention. I'm sure that's why I'm talking to you today.
Well, absolutely. Let's then talk about just your role as the finance minister in terms of the impact that you've made and how you yourself would measure your own performance.
As the Minister of Finance, or just
well, first as the Minister of Finance, first up, yeah.
Yes, I joined in 2019, and then I was Minister of Trade and Industry. Then in 2021, I was transferred to the Minister of Finance. Not a very easy job, because as I speak to you currently in Botswana, we are facing a significant challenge when it comes to revenue. A third of our revenues come from diamonds, and since the beginning of this year, we have not really been selling our diamonds. So that is a big challenge. So the budget that I presented in February, it means now the revenues that I expected when I presented to Parliament are not coming through. So that means having to, on a daily basis, really managing the revenues and the expenditure and prioritizing every day and making sure that you really manage every little header and pillar of our economy.
Let's just talk about diamonds. I mean, it's a big part. Besides the number of cattle heads that you have in Botswana and the massive land mass, diamonds is a big issue in terms of a revenue generator for your country. And I understand that because of diamond sales contraction, that could have an impact on your GDP this year to dropping to just 1%. Tell me about that and the implications that would have.
Well, actually, the first 2 quarters of the year, we had a contraction of 2.9%, so that is a growth rate of negative 2.9 for the first two quarters. That is the first half of 2024, and that compares with in 2023, the same period, our growth rate was 4.3%. So already you can see that has had already a significant impact on our GDP growth. So overall, as the markets are telling us and the experts are saying, we expect that towards the end of the year, we should see an improvement in the diamond market, and that will also help us even in terms of the overall growth of the economy.
Okay, let's go back to the elections issue. So, you having served as the finance minister, the line wasn't very clear earlier on. Let's confirm. I mean, you standing as an MP for in a constituency, right? That's not a prerequisite to become a finance minister, or is it?
It's not a prerequisite to become a finance minister. But as you can expect, we only have 6 positions that we can nominate somebody from outside Parliament who comes in not through a constituency to be a member of Parliament, and they could also be in cabinet. However, given the number of 6 only, and we've also lost quite a few of our people during the primary elections, that means our choice and the opportunity to bring in more technical people into cabinet is very much limited. So it makes sense that when I was in Parliament, especially elected member, I also speak for elections so that I can have a constituency. So that will release the slot that I'm currently holding so that we can bring in other expertise and skills that we need in our cabinet and in our Parliament. It is not a prerequisite, but it will also give you that opportunity to be able to speak for your constituency, because the constituency I'm spending, that's where my home village is, that's where I grew up. Those are the people that I grew amongst. The issues I understand very well because I live them every day. I've lived them. I've gone to school, able to go through this place. I've seen it develop, but there are still some challenges that I believe I'm better placed with my experience and background to assist in the constituency for us to purpose.
What about the oft-repeated rumors and allegations that you're like the president's favorite cabinet minister and could well be related, and therefore that you respond. What would you like to tell us about that?
Thank you very much. One, I read about it in the papers that I'm related to the president, so I'm not related to the president in any way. And just this week I had an interview with somebody as I said to them. I joined the public service in Botswana in 1994 after I had gotten my bachelor's degree in economics and statistics. Then I joined the public service as the Minister of Finance as assistant economist. Then I worked very hard, and by 2011 I was director of macroeconomic policy. This is a very senior position. There nobody talked about my relationship to anybody. And then in 2015,
our permanent secretary. You are appointed by the president, and the president then was Rakham. So the question is, why suddenly am I related to anybody simply because? It does not make sense to me. But to me, it also says, are we still at that place where it's very difficult for us to accept that a woman can work very hard and excel and rise? Maybe that is the issue. Are we still there? I was hoping that we are moving at a speed that is aligned to the times that we find ourselves in. But I think, no, I'm not related to the president. And two, I do not know that I'm his favorite. I don't know how you could measure that, how you could talk to that. I don't know.
Okay.
All that I know is that the president knows that he can give me a job and I'll do to the best of my ability.
Okay, just lastly, before I let you go, just your thoughts on the relationship between South Africa and Botswana. What can you tell us about that?
Thank you very much. Fortunately, I've also been a Minister of Trade and Manufacturing Minister of Trade. I think in any relationship, there are times when we have issues that are very difficult to deal with. There are times when we have to deal with issues that the other person may think they are disadvantaged. But overall, we have a very good relationship with South Africa. We are members of the customs union, which is the oldest in the world. That must tell you something. It speaks volumes to say we've been part of this customs union all this time. Yes, there are instances where we have differences in opinion. I know the critical issue right now is the import ban of some of a few vegetables that we selected. But that does not in any way undermine the relationship that we have and what we hope to achieve together as part of this region to ensure that this region grows. What we are simply looking at is increasing local production in Botswana. If I could tell you what we went through during COVID, it was very difficult sometimes when we had to import food from outside the country. So from that we said, you know what, we need to increase local production. We need to be able to produce our own food. That is what this is all about. And it's just a temporary measure. We do hope that in the nearest future, we will be able to do that and the production will go up. And also I'm hoping that we can also see the value chain in the region. So that what is it that we can do then as South Africa to support Botswana in their endeavors? What is it that we can do as Botswana to support South Africa? And of course other countries in the region.
Okay, I just want to, in fact, we're going to just get to the news in a second, but I think you made the point about the ban on production, on produce, right? But you're saying that will change. You expect that to be temporary, right?
Yes, it's a temporary measure.
Okay, let's leave it at that. It's certainly an issue we're going to track leading up to the election and beyond that. Appreciate you giving off your time. That's Peggy Serame, Botswana's finance minister, but also contesting as one of the candidates for the constituency ahead of the upcoming election in that country. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, Asawa, Gauteng Health has confirmed that over 70 grade 12 learners from various schools in the West End area are receiving treatment in Carltonville hospitals following a suspected food poisoning incident this morning. Various church groupings in Gqeberha held a march against continuous crime in the Nelson Mandela Bay area, and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has held talks in London with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the new head of NATO, Mark Rutte, as he pushes for more support for Ukraine. And those are your headlines. A full news update, 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound in Crown has delays towards Main Reef Road. Woodmead Drive northbound has delays towards Woodland Drive. In Pretoria, Steve Biko Street northbound queuing towards Lavender Road. The N40 northbound has delays towards the R101 interchange, and SK Mpatleli Drive northbound has delays towards Mood Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound, a stationary vehicle after Spaghetti Junction. The N2 southbound has a crash after the M41 Gateway exit. Umgeni Road Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park, and traffic lights stop working at the M7 and South Coast Road. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Cromboom Road exit. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The N7 Jakes Hadville Drive southbound queuing towards Voortrekker Road. Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock, and Main Road northbound slow moving towards Muizenberg. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, we have a significant retirement.
Absolutely bad news. Bad news for those that support Rafa Nadal, including myself, because he's announced that he will retire from tennis at the end of the season. The 38-year-old will represent Spain in his final appearance at next month's Davis Cup finals in Malaga. Now, his career has been disrupted by injuries. He even missed the 2023 French Open, which is one of his best in terms of his performance at the French Open. However, he has been suggesting that he's going to retire soon, and him retiring now, he retires as the second most successful men's singles player of all time, behind only longtime rival Novak Djokovic. 22 Grand Slam titles to his name, an absolutely great career. And his longtime friend and great rival Roger Federer was quite quick to pay a warm tribute, saying, "What a career, Rafa. I always hoped that this day would never come. Thank you for the unforgettable memories and all your incredible achievements in the game that we love. It's been an absolute honor." Meanwhile, top seed Jannik Sinner beat Daniil Medvedev 6-1, 6-4 in their Shanghai Masters quarterfinal encounter. Next up, he faces Thomas Magac, who upset third seed Carlos Alcaraz 7-6 and 7-5 for his maiden ATP 1000 semi-final. So looking forward to that semi-final. Moving on to football, Bafana Bafana coach Hugo Broos has reiterated that he wants to see the real Bafana Bafana in the two matches against Congo, unlike what he saw in the opening two matches of the AFCON qualifiers against Uganda and South Sudan, respectively. The Belgian-born coach is raising the importance of guarding against complacency.
And I want to see the real South Africa. We didn't see the real South Africa in our last two games. I was not happy with the performance. I was happy with the results. A little bit less happy when I speak about the result against Uganda. I wanted to win that game. But we won, but two times we were lucky. So our performance was not what I expected. And I want to see another South Africa in the two games they are in front of us. And you know, this is a little bit normal in the way that the last 2 years it was a good news show with Bafana Bafana. We played good, we had good results, we qualified for AFCON, we had the bronze medal, then the game against Algeria in March, against Nigeria, Zimbabwe, so everything was okay. And then, it's a little bit normal that you have a little decompression.
Well, don't forget that kickoff tomorrow is at 7 p.m. and is happening at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. Then the Nations League returns tonight, and pick of the week is Italy versus Belgium. Italy currently leads the group with 6 points, having won both of their opening games, while Belgium sit in second place with 3 points with a win and a loss. Israel remains at the bottom of the table without a point, and they take on France today. And then there's also England versus Greece, with all these clashes getting underway around 9 p.m. Elsewhere, former England manager Gareth Southgate says that he will not return to a coaching role for at least a year. Remember that he's been linked with Manchester United amid the uncertainty over the future of Erik ten Hag at Old Trafford. And with him saying that he's going to be away from football for at least a year, we can officially rule him out with the immediate effect. Anything's off with cricket at Stumps. Pakistan are 152 for 6 in their second innings against England, and they're trailing England by 115 runs. This is the first test between these two nations. Earlier, Harry Brook and Joe Root shared England's highest test partnership of 454 runs as the visitors declared their first innings on 823 for 7. Root became the first England batter to amass 20,000 international runs and the country's all-time scorer in test cricket with 12,664. Brook on the other side side, also wrote his name in the history books as his maiden triple 100 was the sixth by the Englishman in Test. With that said, I'll have more in at the next hour.
You made the point about Nadal, and you said you'll be one of them. Was like your heart's broken. Obviously, he's one of the great tennis players of all time. But why would you set him apart? Like, why are you a fan of his versus, say, Novak Djokovic or Roger Federer?
I loved his way of playing. I loved him and Roger. I think for me, Nadal was just a go-getter and he never gave up easily. And I loved how his mannerisms on the tennis court. Have you seen him?
But they have a different temperament. I mean, Spaniards have a different temperament to others. And I mean, it comes through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just his demeanor as a whole also. As an athlete, you could just see that he's very hard on himself. Number one, and he always wants to perform at his best. That's why he's willing to just say, listen, this is it right now because my injuries are just not going away.
But in that case, I mean, he's doing the right thing, isn't it? Can you imagine him, besides breaking your heart, imagine him continuing and then not performing, then getting knocked out in the first and second round because he just can't maintain the level of excellence that he has set for himself.
And that's not the Nadal we know, right?
Yeah.
So you'd want to always perform at his best. I mean, that's why he pulled out of some of the tournaments earlier on this year, saying that, listen, I just feel like I'm not going to compete at my best.
I think it's a good decision. One of the big disappointments of my life as a boxing fan was Muhammad Ali continuing after he beat Leon Spinks.
Sure.
I think it was a Frazier to win that third title. He should have quit then. He went on continuing fighting for another 2-3 years, wasting his time and losing matches that he should never have actually fought in the first
And I think
place.
that's the thing about athletes, right? Knowing when to stop, because some don't.
Well, now we know. Knowing when to stop, that's another advert completely, but let's not even get into that, right? More sport in an hour.
The wait is finally over, and we can safely say that Tropica Island of Treasure is back to serve you some really great entertainment. Tune into S3 from the 28th of September to cheer on the 7 teams who will be vying to win a shared prize of 1 million rand, a brand new car each, and become the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure Season 11. Fancy 50,000 bucks? Predict the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure and you might be sipping that cold, refreshing Tropica all the way to the bank. Follow at MyTropica and at SABC3 for more information. Channel your inner champion with Tropica Island of Treasure starts Saturday the 28th of September at 6:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3. Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The Leopards and Taifa Stars have a big battle in the top of the table clash. DRC is only interested in 3 points to maintain their winning rhythm, while the East Africans also want victory to sustain their unbeaten run in Group H. This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the journey to Morocco, DR Congo versus Tanzania on Thursday, 10 October at 6 p.m. Live everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, let's get into another important issue. By the way, lots of people commenting on the issue of the police officer, around that insurance story, the allegation and the murders. What a horrific story. And we will take your comments as soon as we get a window to do just that. I certainly want to hear what you have to say. However, let's get to this issue now. According to the latest Clean Creative South Africa report, fossil fuel companies like Sasol still contribute 3/4 of the pollution driving global warming. Global warming is a big issue. I may have made the point at the One Young World event that I was on. I'd spoken to some senior people around, activists around that, David Suzuki, one of them, and therefore, this report also highlights how South Africa's advertising and PR industry is not only failing to align with clean energy trends, but is actively working to protect the fossil fuel industry from accountability. The report focuses on recent fossil fuel contracts between 2023 and 24, exposes the deep entanglement of local creative agencies in enabling the fossil fuel industry to greenwash its image while contributing to dangerous climate change. So that context, going back to my point about One Young World, about who drives the global narrative around what is acceptable and what is not, I think is an important one. So with me now is Brandon Abednor, who is the head of the Pollution and Climate Change Program at the Center for Environmental Rights. Brandon, thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. I suppose, in reading the intro, your big issue right now is not so much the broader issue around climate change, because, that we know is a big problem, right? But you're particularly concerned around what? South African ad agencies effectively whitewashing the realities of the time.
Well, often called greenwashing, but yes, that's really it. I think one of the problems is that the fossil fuel companies are obviously sort of big players in our economy and our society, and they have a lot of social license to continue the way they do. And what they were doing decades ago wasn't recognized as being a problem, whereas now it is. And, the contribution of their products to global warming, they've known about, in some cases, as far back as the 50s, certainly by the 80s, and there are many court cases, particularly in the US, where it's been shown that their own scientists warned the companies about what the effects of burning these products would be, and then how these companies went on basically misinformation and disinformation campaigns in order to hide that fact from the public. And now we see, even they can't deny it so much, but they still tend to want to portray themselves as being responsible, as being interested in a transition. But at the end of the day, they continue to explore for more oil, gas, and the problem keeps getting aggravated.
But is it a problem that you or we are losing? We meaning the greater South African, the global world, versus big business corporates who push for profit and sometimes are okay with harming some aspects of our environment, as we clearly, it's been evidenced across the world right now, right? What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's, obviously those companies don't particularly want to change at the end of the day. And I can't sort of speak for each and every one in terms of each and every detail. But at the end of the day, they want to continue to exploit that, continue those profits, continue to reap in the subsidies that they get from the public at large. And continue doing what they're doing, despite the fact that they know that what they're doing is causing this harm. So we have an industry that's sort of reaping in billions. I think there's one study that suggests it's $3 billion a day as an industry collectively around the world. Then on the other hand, we're having the losses and damages that come from climate change, and that's being borne by society as a whole, either by the state in terms of public money having to be used to fix those losses and damages, or in many cases ordinary people whose lives can get devastated. We just look back at the Durban floods and they're left with that damage, and already difficult lives now being that much more difficult.
So let's then talk about what is called the Clean Creatives Pledge. Tell me about that.
I think that's something probably better asked from the Clean Creatives people themselves, but really it's looking at sort of conscientizing the industry. PR is a service industry, and advertising, they take on clients and they obviously amplify those clients' messages and portray them in a certain light. So it's really, really conscientizing those service providers in the economy and saying, look, be aware that these companies and this messaging and these activities are causing this damage. So, you as service providers also look to yourselves and decide what it is you're prepared to take on and what messages you're prepared to amplify. We see similar kinds of initiatives in the legal industry around the world where, there are activists calling for lawyers to stop representing those companies that are causing harm and really show no signs of wanting to do anything differently.
But having said that, and I hear you, what then in terms of your position as the head of the Pollution and Climate Change Program at the Center for Environmental Rights, how much of influence do you have in changing agency habits?
Well, I don't know if we have that influence. So, as with many aspects of the climate crisis, it's one of the issues is a lack of understanding by all quadrants of society, exactly about what the extent of the crisis is and what the causes are. So as with many other aspects, it's really about making these facts available so that people can come to the conclusions themselves. You know, and it's never that successful to sort of bang a drum and expect people to, you know, just suddenly take on one's viewpoint and start doing the thing. But if people come from an informed base, and then can make up those choices themselves, then they sort of everyone starts to shoulder that collective responsibility.
But therefore, maybe, and the last thing before I let you go, do you get a sense therefore that companies and list agencies, you know, and of course vice versa between the two of them, to push the line about the greenwashing that allows them to continue doing things although they know it's harmful to the environment, and that's where you come in as a pressure group, but it's a battle that you're not winning?
Well, I don't know if it's winning, and in terms of climate sort of crisis response, this is a relatively newer initiative. You know, it starts off relatively simply. Highlight the issue, first of all, convincing society that something like the climate crisis in fact exists, because that's been a journey in itself. Technically, that scientific information has been in the public domain. I mean, in some cases as far back as a century, but certainly from the late 80s. And then we see how that struggle diversifies. So, for example, in this case with the creatives, but also when people bring pressure onto banks and financiers to stop financing fossil fuel projects. And, you know, it's a sort of bit by bit situation. We certainly see people coming around. It sometimes can feel like it's a bit slow, and obviously there's a tremendous urgency to cut greenhouse gas emissions as quickly as possible.
And finally, what would you like to see happen next as a matter of urgency in the context of our conversation?
Well, I'd say the PR agencies and ad agencies like accepting or looking into the information that's being provided and deciding for themselves, you know what, it is not going to serve ourselves or society at large to continue amplifying messages that tend to greenwash or tend to mislead the public into thinking that certain companies are behaving socially responsibly when in fact they're not.
Okay, let's in fact maybe get hold of the heads of the various advertising agencies and see how they respond to all of this. Brandon Abednor, thank you for your time, much appreciated. Head of the Pollution and Climate Change Program at the Center for Environmental Rights. Thanks, much appreciated. Now, what about you listening in? Because I always say, you know, as the audience, you play this huge role in effectively moving the national pulse. You keep fingers on the pulse, you keep it all in check. And what do you make about, do you have a sense that climate change exists? There's clear evidence, scientific evidence of its impact on the world. But do you get a sense that there are big corporations that continue on this path, knowing it will damage the environment because there's profit in that, and then they use advertising agencies to, as has been discussed, greenwash, ensuring that it's more palatable in terms of their brand communication? Do you think that's true, or do you think that's completely off the mark? If you have an opinion on that, just text me or WhatsApp me, or you can call in 086 000 2032.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference.
South African Airways is expanding in the DRC. We now offer direct flights from Johannesburg to Lubumbashi, the heart of the DRC's mining hub. Our convenient arrival time allows seamless connections to key regions like Ndola and the Copper Belt, opening up new growth opportunities. Traders can benefit from our generous baggage allowance, while SAA's superior aircraft belly capacity ensures your cargo reaches most parts of Congo on the same day. Book now at flysaa.com or contact your travel agent. South African Airways, connecting Africa to the world, one flight at a time.
The Stallions get it that the only way to remain on top of Group L is through a win. However, the Swallows refuse to be left behind. They target a second victory to move away from the third position. This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the journey to Morocco, Burkina Faso versus Burundi on Thursday, 10 October at 9 p.m. Live everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
It's interesting. Today is the type of day there are so many issues from lobby groups and lobbyists of different sorts picking up on some of the most fundamental issues in our country and in the world. And this applies to what we're talking about next, because Section 27, representing Blind SA, they've launched an urgent application in the Constitutional Court against President Ramaphosa for failing to sign the Copyright Amendment Bill, which is CAB, that's the acronym. Now, this follows 2 years after the Constitutional Court handed down judgment in the matter, also brought by Blind SA, challenging the constitutionality of the Copyright Act for infringing on the rights of blind and visually impaired persons. So, I certainly need to know more about this. I'm sure you do. Let's find out more about it with the candidate attorney at Section 27's, and that is Fatima Laher. Fatima, I appreciate your time. You're connected to the National Pulse.
Good day to you and your listeners. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, let's start with the first thing. I mean, the issue that Section 27 is raising, which is that you're concerned about President Ramaphosa failing to sign the Copyright Amendment Bill. What is that about, and why is that a particular concern to the constituency that you represent, which is Blind SA?
So we'll be going to court asking for a mandatory order asking the president to please sign the Copyright Amendment Bill. So we went to court in 2022 to the Constitutional Court against the Copyright Amendment Bill, which the court then declared unconstitutional to the extent that certain sections limited access for persons who are blind and visually impaired to convert materials into accessible formats. The deadline to sign this bill was on the 21st of September. We have passed the deadline, and now we are asking the president to sign the bill as he was compelled to do by the Constitutional Court. The bill has then been referred to Parliament. Parliament has made the necessary, has taken the necessary steps to fix the defects in the bill, and now it's just up for the president to sign.
Okay, let's take it one step at a time. What are the defects in the bill?
So the Copyright Amendment Act did not allow for persons who are blind or visually impaired to convert materials into accessible formats. This was then when we went to the Constitutional Court in 2022, and the Constitutional Court declared the Act unconstitutional. It was then referred to Parliament to fix these defects, allowing for access for these materials to be converted, and has now been referred to the president to sign the bill.
Do I take it that means that that people who are blind had no protection against their work being copyrighted, but others who were not blind had the protection? Is that the point of difference?
No, that's not the point of difference. What's happened currently is people who are blind or visually impaired cannot take, for example, a book and convert it into Braille. Or some people who are print disabled cannot convert a book into a larger print that makes it more accessible for them to read. So you can imagine that someone who is blind or visually impaired then is limited in terms of studying, in terms of reading for leisure, in terms of accessing any kind of material that's not in an accessible format to them.
Okay, and therefore it will prejudice them in terms of their own learning and reading processes. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Well, you mentioned, there's been a move for the president to sign the bill. Has he or members of parliament, are they saying anything that would suggest they will do just that?
No, we haven't heard anything from the president. We have written to the president. However, we haven't received any feedback, and hence we are going to court to compel the president to then sign the bill. Also, signing this bill is quite important for us to then ratify the Marrakesh Treaty, because we cannot ratify the Marrakesh Treaty unless our copyright internal laws specifically allow for it. So once this bill is passed, South Africa can then ratify the Marrakesh Treaty, which then grants access to various platforms such as ABC, which is an accessible book consortium of something like 820,000 titles in accessible formats, along with another platform called Bookshare, which has 900,000 books in accessible formats. And as you can imagine, currently the stats are 3.7 million people in South Africa do not have access to reading materials in a format that they require.
And that would be, that would be a fundamental human right, right?
Yes, definitely.
And you'd wonder why there's a delay. But let's leave it at that. Let's see what comes up in the next few days as well. Much appreciate you giving off your time, Fatima Lahir, the Section 27's candidate attorney. Thank you for that. Now, what about you, the audience? Wherever you may be in the country, around the world, what do you make of that as per copyright and how it affects blind people, where they can't access it in terms of the language that they understand, which is Braille, and therefore they're being prejudiced against it, and that bill has not been signed into law, and therefore that continues right now. Any thoughts on that, and what for you would be the win-win solution? You can also WhatsApp us, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. Let's get to the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. G. The top stories, Asawa. Some food poison matriculants are discharged from hospital, and church groupings march against crime in Gqeberha. A very good afternoon. Gauteng Health says some of the matric learners who were earlier hospitalized for suspected food poisoning are expected to be discharged. The learners fell ill at a matric camp this morning. 74 female learners from Fochville Secondary, Badirile Secondary and Wetela Technical Schools were part of the matric camp at Fochville Secondary. Gauteng Health spokesperson Mutalatale Mudiba.
They are having this matric camp at one of the schools in the district. So they ate something in the morning, and it looks like whatever that they ate had an effect on them, because all of them started complaining of stomach cramps. 73 are being treated at the hospital, and then one was taken to a private facility. What is good is that they are all doing well. So in fact, just a minute ago when I was talking to the CEO of the facility, he confirmed that they will start discharging some of them because they're fairly stable, so they can be discharged to go home.
Public Protector Koleka Gcaleka and her impeached predecessor Busi Mkhwebane took each other on in Parliament earlier today. Mkhwebane started by describing Gcaleka's explanation to one of her questions as nonsensical. She wanted to know about the security information pertaining to the current CEO in the PP's office, Thandisi Banyoni. However, Gcaleka hit back by saying Mkhwebane should stop acting as if she's beyond reproach because she happens to be a member of Parliament now. Various church groupings in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape have held a march against continuous crime in the Nelson Mandela Bay. This follows incidents where criminals enter churches and rob congregants, as well as demanding protection fees. Residents say they are living in fear because of extortion. The march has handed over a memorandum to the Speaker of the Eastern Cape Legislature. Reverend Siposethu Dalindyebo says the march signals that they've had enough and want change in communities.
The crime has escalated and enters the doors of the church. And we then therefore sat together as the church in Port Elizabeth to say, guys, let's come together. Enough is enough. This cannot be continuing happening in our communities, in our schools, now in the churches. It's atrocious and it leaves nothing to be desired. And therefore we sat and we said, let's march against crime. And another
Vote counting is underway in Mozambique after yesterday's election, which is widely expected to hand another victory to the Frelimo party that has been in power for 4 decades. Results are expected by Saturday, although the full count may take up to 2 weeks. The opposition has alleged vote rigging, although election observers report no major issues so far. Candidates are competing to replace the outgoing president, Filipe Nyusi, who is stepping down after 2 terms. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has held talks in London with the British Prime Minister and the new head of the NATO as he pushes for more support for Ukraine. He's visiting a number of European capitals, including Paris and Rome, later today. Zelensky is discussing the details of his plan for trying to defeat Russia's invading forces. The BBC's Danny Eberhardt has more.
There's a whole series of things that President Zelensky would like. Now, one of the main focuses for today will be trying to persuade Britain and France to allow Ukraine to use long-range cruise missiles inside Russia with these sort of weapons, not just those with US weapons, ATACMS missiles. Now, Western allies have been cautious about this. They've certainly not committed. It's possible, conceivable that they may yet do, but obviously the backdrop of the US election complicates things there.
The top story at 4 o'clock, Gauteng Health says some of the matric learners who were earlier hospitalized for suspected food poisoning are expected to be discharged. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
In sports this hour, Soweto Marathon Trust members threaten CGA with legal action and big test awaits SA sides abroad in URC. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg, slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards Olifantsfontein Road. In Sandton Drive westbound, slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive, and Grayston Drive eastbound, queuing at Linden Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound is slow moving towards the Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. The N3 westbound has a crash reported at Kato Ridge. The N3 westbound has a stationary truck reported at Key Ridge, and Umgeni Road westbound, slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound, queuing towards Voortrekker Road. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard exit is queuing towards Hospital Bend, and Batencross Street outbound, slow moving towards the elevated freeway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
My name's Michael Fontaine. I'm 16. I have difficulty paying attention in class, so I fell behind. That's why my parents moved me to UCT Online High School. I can't thank them enough. Their flexible learning means I can take classes when it suits me, so I get ahead and stay ahead. Visit uctonlinehighschool.com to learn more. Applications close 29 November 2024.
4 dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Sea Point, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 Rand, with an additional 100,000 Rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m, only on S3. Open up.
S3.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I'm looking at your tweet in Kolisi saying the first question is there a national pulse, and what do you think the national pulse is and what moves it, yes or no? So perhaps amplifying what I'm saying, there clearly has to be a national pulse, and what I mean by national pulse is what are the issues that drives the nation daily, and that of course changes. You get an annual national pulse, which could well be the election we've just had this year, but within that there are changes every single day, issues that impact on how we feel about ourselves and our country, and how that changes things, and that really is the national pulse, or maybe in another word, the national psyche. So here's another one that's interesting. I mean, Helen Isaac saying, why do we have to listen to the same Julius Malema sound bites all day long? Find something more interesting to discuss, please. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to play those Malema sound bites now, and I'll tell you what, to answer the question right off the bat, when a leader of a significant political party has a media briefing that also talks about the elective conference in December and a whole range of other issues, and responds also to the changes in the mayoral leadership in the city of Tshwane, and they're part of that, how, you tell me, how do we ignore that? We cannot ignore it. In fact, in many ways, the media reflects the news makers. We don't make the news. So as long as they talk about issues, whoever they may be, the EFF, the DA, the ANC, and others, we have to reflect it, and we do that right away. I thought I'd just tell you that, right? Okay, let's now talk about that Julius Malema media briefing, or the EFF leader. He briefed the media today at the party's headquarters, and what we're going to do is going to play some of the clips of what he said, and then we'll get a response from an analyst after that. So first things first, he touched on, you may remember this, I think I was abroad at the time, and he spoke about allegations against the former Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor, and VBS Bank, and she was scathing in her response to him to say, you're out of order. But he said this today.
Things will turn around in time. And when we say the mayor must hit the ground running, we simply mean that, you know, it shouldn't take a mayor 2-3 days to send the trucks to go and remove illegal dumping in Mamelodi. If you go to Mamelodi, you'll be shocked by the state of affairs. And you go to Mamelodi, you'll find people in Mamelodi queuing for water, something that we are used to in the rural areas, not in a capital city. So we have that situation, and because the party that was in government only focused on the white areas. So we hope the bringing in of the EFF, Action SA, the ANC, will have the interest for all, not the interest for black people or interest for white people, but with the priority being the black people, the African townships and colored townships, followed by Indian townships, and the white suburbs, because in the white suburbs they've got almost everything. But the colors and the Africans are the most excluded when it comes to service delivery in Tshwane. So we are for mayor sharing. We are for Tshwane, Action SA, Joburg, ANC, Ekurhuleni, EFF. But the ANC, in its form and character, is very disloyal to its own decisions because they had agreed to this and then only changed later against what we agreed on.
Okay, let me correct myself. That's clearly not about Naledi Pandor, but that is Julius Malema sharing his views on what is happening now in the city of Tshwane regarding the mayoral change and the role they've played. So that's the first thing. Then he spoke about Naledi Pandor.
Mama Naledi Shemai, you know, I was making a political engagement in that interview. It's a political speech. It's a political speak. And I raised her name, and she clarified those things, that she has never been involved in those things and all of that. And she wrote a letter to me to ask for instruction and all of that. And I said, look, it's a political engagement. I respect you so much, and I've accepted the explanation you have given, and I don't intend to pursue that line, because now there is more clarity on what really transpired. And I've sent that letter, and I don't want to engage with her in a public spect. It's one of the respectable former ministers of our country who's at the forefront of fighting the struggles for the total liberation of Palestine. Why do you want to go into confrontation with such a person? So I did not say that to want to negatively impact on her image or anything. I was engaged in a political engagement. And she came back and said, no, but you are wrong. I'm not involved in the way you are describing it. I don't know what you're talking about and all of that, and accepted that. And that's a political engagement. That's how it works. So political speech is protected by the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And that speech is presented differently from how lectures are presented in lecture halls. So we can't, when we're engaged in political speech, always be threatening each other with letters. I've written back and I said, look, I don't want to fight with the minister. I engaged the way I engaged, and she engaged the way she engaged. I accept clarity, and I don't want to pursue that line of argument. So that's the end of it. If she wants to pursue it, that's her own issue, but I'm not in that space anymore. Thanks.
Okay, we've learnt a new word between, accusations about alleged wrongdoings by a former minister to what is now called political engagement. We'll certainly get the analysts to talk about that issue, right? Okay, furthermore, Julius Malema spoke about the Agriculture Minister, John Steenhuisen. Remember, he's not just the Agriculture Minister, he's also the leader of the DA, right? And he spoke about him hiring an unqualified advisor to his office.
That one. He's in the ethics there, where I sit. And these people can't be paid. Because if they get paid and they are unqualified, they themselves are getting themselves in trouble. Because once it is found that they were not qualified and not deserving of those salaries, they are going to be asked to pay back that money. And they are putting themselves into big trouble. Steenhuisen must just know, ijampile. Unarwa mogola is not working. He must leave it. But because he's a matriculant and he loves matriculants himself, he's so married to that idea of hiring unqualified people. So we're not going to sit back. We've told all of you that DA is led by mediocrity and is saved by white skin. Because they are white, you don't critique them the same way you are critiquing us. Today, you made us the face of corruption. Mashaba tells you every day, no leader of the EFF came to me when I was a mayor to ask for a tender, but we are the face of corruption. And he says Tony Leon came to my house to ask for a tender. So But DA is not a face of corruption because it's white skin. DA survives through Swart Khafar. So they put my face to scare white people. They've made me a political ho-ho of white people. When white people are about to shift, they say, "Huh," and then they run away. But we supported DA here and they were ready to receive our support under Mashaba. Why didn't they say, no, we can't take the support of people who are going to kill us, who are going to destroy wildlife? We even supported the illiterate in Ekuruleni, madam, who was very scared to go to Tembisa of DA, that madam. Madam, why that time when we were voting for her, she didn't see Swart Khafar?
Okay. Again, another very clear my throat, sorry. Another comment from Malema that you should consider, but what that really means. Then what about the Progressive Caucus? And remember, that's the caucus outside of the GNU, right? So what about the role they play in Parliament?
I wrote progressive question. What is progressive? Well, the Progressive Caucus is there. It meets every Tuesday. The chief whips meet to prepare for a week ahead. And we've been on oversight, parliament recess oversight. So there was never a need because the Progressive Caucus works on the basis of what is on the agenda of Parliament, what do we want to put on the agenda of Parliament, which areas are we agreeing on, and then it begins and ends there. Doesn't go anywhere.
Then he spoke about the GNU, right, which we often talk about every single day. But interesting, Malema made an interesting comment or comparison between the ANC Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, and the ANC President, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Ramaphosa didn't need the DA at all, but he decided to go with the DA. So, at the center of this, I don't understand what Mbalula ate from who. Because the guy has changed. No one, the people who grew up with him, not a single person can identify the Mbalula who's speaking today, who's addressing us every week like a presenter of Pala Pala FM. He's always pete, 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 saying a lot of nothing. Every week, there's a week where he addressed us the whole week. The whole week. So, why is Mbalula defending GNU even more than the person who came with the GNU, Ramaphosa? I mean, Ramaphosa is very reasonable about it. Mbalula is not reasonable about it. You speak against it, you will get a letter. What are you saying? When you arrive there, Ramaphosa says, hey, what are you doing here? Say, no, I'm called here. Say, there's no explanation. No, you are a list man. I don't understand what this guy is talking about. He is more GNU more than the person who came. The person who came with this thing is Ramaphosa. Mbalula is the main man to date. He has overtaken the founder of the.
Okay, that is Julius Malema. We'll get a response from a political analyst, and you, of course, in a moment.
For 18 years, Khumbula Khaya has been fostering healing through forgiveness and reconciliation.
Are you asking me that?
Yes.
I grew up without a mom.
So what happened to your family?
What family? You are my family. What happened to you?
Witness as families forgive one another and reunite after a long time. Catch the new season of Khumbula Khaya on SABC1 every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the Tooth Fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The Desert Warriors are looking for their third victory to maintain a 100% winning record. Togo are fighting for their first win after 2 draws in their opening 2 matches. This is the top of the table contest in Group E. Experience the journey to Morocco in the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Algeria versus Togo on Thursday, 10 October at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone. Always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, we'll join the political analyst in a moment. I want to just play one more clip where Julius Malema then speaks about the upcoming EFF National Conference. Remember, there's been lots of conversation about just what has happened to the EFF since that last election, and they've lost a significant leader in the deputy president of the EFF. Well, Julius Malema had this to say.
The media, the officials of the EFF, the people of South Africa, the Economic Freedom Fighters is going to the 3rd National People's Assembly, which will be held between the 12th and 15th of December 2024 at Johannesburg Nazareth Expo Center under the theme Defend, Rebuild and Advance the Struggle for Economic Freedom. The National People's Assembly is the highest decision-making body of the EFF, convened by the democratically elected Central Command Team every 5 years. This gathering is attended by 90% of delegates from branches of the EFF. Since we released guidelines on the 30th of July 2024, out of 2,123 branches that met the requirements to convene a branch People's Assembly, branch General Assembly, a total of 1,100 branches met, elected new leadership and programs of action and delegates to the NPA. A branch that meets the requirements is a branch that has 100 paid-up members who are registered to vote in their branch and received a minimum of 10% of the votes in the 2024 national and provincial elections. Additionally, 1,023 branches are currently preparing to convene their meetings in order to meet the deadline of the 30th of October 2024. The Leadership Collective is satisfied that the majority of EFF members have conducted themselves with maximum discipline and in line with the guidelines, which demonstrate a sign of political maturity and the growth of the organization, with the exception of minor incidents and disputes, which were all positively resolved. We want to commend all delegates and encourage all of them to continue with maximum discipline to defend the movement, because there will be a temptation to provoke us. There will be information peddlers and spies. We must remain vigilant. Registration of all delegates will take place at the University of Johannesburg Soweto campus on the 12th of December, starting from 10 a.m. All delegates from branches, regions, and provinces will be transported to the registration venue and accommodation in various hotels around Johannesburg with daily shuttles to Nazareth Expo Center.
Okay, what we'll do is we're going to in fact speak to our analyst just after the news and sport. Okay, let's get to some of your comments. First of all, there's Tsepo saying, welcome back, Ashraf. Much appreciated, Tsepo. Enjoyed being away, but certainly enjoyed being back now. Absolutely. Right, lots of people commenting about some of the big issues. Understandably, Julius Malema.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, you know what? I don't buy Malema's story. He is used to saying lies about people. He uses platforms like the media statements and stuff like that, lying about people. So this time around, he got the person who wants to put him into his right place. That is his tendency, lying about people. And he never apologizes after lying about people. They must teach him a lesson.
Well, they called it political engagement, whatever that means, right? Here's another.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, I think Julius Malema, he thinks all of us, we are members of EFF, whereby he can just say things and then we will agree. What is so political about what he said about Naledi Pandor? There was nothing political except that he was quoting her as one of the corrupt ANC members. So now he retracts. Instead of retracting, he say it's a political statement. Nothing political.
Well, okay, point made, and I've certainly made my point earlier on as well. Let's talk about the police.
Hi, Ashraf, your team and the listeners. With regard to that horrific story of poor people who were killed by that greedy policewoman, look, Ashraf, it's that is just as a result of the corruption that is happening in the country. I wouldn't be surprised that she actually bribed her way into being employed from to the police force. So it starts from there. And yes, it's horrific because she killed people. But in South Africa, people are paying bribes for everything, you know. Not necessarily killing people, but they pay bribes to make dockets to disappear, which is exactly the same as this one. Greed. Thanks, Ashraf.
Well, whatever the motive is, I mean, the bottom line to this, it's horrific. People have lost their lives, and that much we know, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, the reason we're seeing a lot of these police officers being arrested left, right, center, there's simple one reason, like you've asked our guest, that what about the recruitment? How is the recruitment? The problem is, where I stay in Masoe in Mpumalanga, they were writing the police exams last year here on the TVET college. They are told to bring pens and pencils, but when they get into the examination center, they're using pencils to fill the forms and write the aptitude test. Why are they using pencils? Then it seems like wrong people ended up being chosen to come and work at the force. Why must we use a pencil? Tulani from Masoe in Mpumalanga.
Well, there you are. I won't even answer why must we use a pencil. I can think about 20 reasons, of all of them hugely impactful, isn't it? Thanks for that. We'll play more calls. I'll certainly take your calls as well in a few minutes' time. Let's get to the news headlines now. Here's Madubi.
Thanks, Ashraf. Good afternoon. In your headlines, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says they're working on deploying intelligence to check the compliance of all spaza shops in Gauteng. The Gauteng Health Department says some of the matric learners who were earlier hospitalized for suspected food poisoning are expected to be discharged. And at least 3 million people have been left without power in the U.S. state of Florida after Hurricane Milton swept through the region overnight. Details with Greg in your news, 5 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 westbound in Crown has delays towards Main Reef Road. The M1 southbound is slow moving through Crown, interchange towards Boysons. Rivonia Road in Morningside has a crash reported at South Road and a power outage affecting traffic lights not working at multiple junctions in the Pretoria area, so expect delays. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle after the Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. The N2 southbound has a crash after Mgeni Road. The M4 southbound queuing towards Virginia Airport, and the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg queuing towards Market Road exit. In Cape Town, the R44 southbound has a crash reported near Stellenrist Road. The R44 has a crash north of Cromrie Road. Kommetjie Road northbound is slow moving at Masipumalele, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, to our Minister of Sport, let's get an update on the Soweto Marathon. Tumi, go ahead.
Yeah, Soweto Marathon Trust head Ishe Sadike has accused Central Gauteng Athletics of meddling in the trust's affairs and threatened legal action. Now, the SMT expelled members Cyril Lokono and Sadike last year, and with just weeks to go before the Soweto Marathon is happening on the 3rd of November in Nasrec, they are threatening legal action. Now, the group alleges that CGA has hijacked the trust and is urging Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie and the South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee to intervene, warning that the dispute may end up in the High Court.
ASA suspended or expelled the trustees, and they know that is an unacceptable situation in that they don't have any jurisdiction over the trustees. They don't determine who becomes a trustee, who doesn't become a trustee. It's a matter of the law.
Yes.
The High Court determined that from what you know. All trusts, family trust, business trust, commercial, everything, they are governed by the Trust Property Control Act, which is controlled or managed by the Master of the High Court, period.
What's the story with the Soweto Marathon?
It's just a lot of things, with some people feeling that they shouldn't be let go from the trust. But I think for me, with all these legal issues around the Soweto Marathon, with the Soweto Marathon coming up on the 3rd of November, just last week I was reading a story that they're trying to reach 25,000. And they were only at 25,000 registrations, and they were only on 15,000. And the deadline was extended. But I'm saying, with all these legal things happening behind the scenes, guys, this is the people's race.
But are people not entering the marathon because they're having a problem with the administration, or they have a problem with it being in Soweto, or is there something else?
I really don't know. And that was the question that was put out, that why are people not registering for the People's Race?
But in
because
the past,
it's a popular race.
It's been successful. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
it's really good and great TV coverage as well, isn't it?
That's the thing. So I was wondering, is it a matter of marketing, or just people don't view the Soweto Marathon as that big people's race that one would want to go and run?
Who's in charge of the Soweto Marathon? I mean, forgive my...
By the Soweto Marathon Trust.
Yeah. So that they run it,
yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we need to find out more and follow that story. It's an important one. You can't have, continued extensions of deadlines because they can't get the numbers right for the Soweto Marathon. It probably needs to be an important legacy marathon in the way you talk about some of the great marathons in the world because of its connection to Soweto. I think they need to play up on that part there. Maybe speak to the Mandela Foundation. I'm being serious. Do what you need to do.
Absolutely. We'll definitely try to get someone from the Soweto Marathon or even the Central Gauteng Athletics. But moving on to rugby, a tough test for SA United Rugby Championship franchises this weekend as they play abroad this weekend for the first time this season. Benetton hosts the Sharks in Italy in the first of the 3 matches on Saturday, which will be followed by Edinburgh and DHL Stormers, while Ospreys face the Vodacom Bulls. Then the Emirates Lions take on Dragons on Sunday in Wales, and the results will definitely have an influence on the log standings, where there's just 6 points that separate second place from 13th place. So every single point will definitely be key. But moving on to football, Kaizer Chiefs goalkeeper Bruce Vuma has all but reiterated that coach Nazruddin Nabi's statement that for the club to restore a winning culture, the approach has to quickly change. The Soweto Giant appeared a rejuvenated outfit since the start of the 2024-25 season under the Tunisian mentor, along with his technical staff. And Vuma says one of the big takeaways under the new regime is making sure Chiefs don't resemble the squad from previous campaigns.
Definitely the mentality changed from the way we were thinking last season. I think it's one of the things that the coach has been emphasizing, that we need to change our mentality. We need to do better in certain areas, and I believe we've been doing well.
In EFC, despite missing out on a UFC contract during his stint in the American reality TV series The Ultimate Fighter, South African board Rudy Roots believes that experience could give him an edge in the Hexagon tonight. Roots takes on Ayanda Zwane at EFC 118 for the interim featherweight championship, one of the most contested MMA divisions, and Roots says that the last weeks have been what his career needed. Finally, in tennis, Erica Andreeva defeated her higher-ranked younger sister, Mira, in the first professional meeting between the two talented siblings to reach the last 16 of the Wuhan Open. The Russian pair became the first sisters to play each other in a WTA win-draw match since Serena Williams defeated older sister Venus at the Top Seed Open in Kentucky back in 2020. Erica claimed a 6-3 and 6-1 win over 17-year-old Mira and will now play Italian world number 6 Jasmine Paolini for a quarterfinal place. On that note, is a wraps from my side for now. I'll have you in the next hour.
Great, thanks. We'll talk in an hour. And yeah, maybe not today, but sometime I think we need to keep an eye on that Soweto Marathon story. Absolutely.
Cultural Urban Festival Africa will conclude the weekend in style with an exhilarating brand of football. The City of Roses will vibrate as Bakhabane Bantwa battles it out with Amakhosi. This is the inaugural Kufa Cup. Who will conquer the 90 minutes at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein? Witness the incredible Kufa Cup clash between Maruma Gallants and Kaizer Chiefs this Sunday, 13 October at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. You can also catch it everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCsport.com. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro, Spar, BP, and Shell. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
EFC 118 promises to be one of the most scintillating fight nights in recent memory with two standout matchups. Fresh off his incredible run in The Ultimate Fighter, Rody Roots battles for the interim featherweight strap against deadly kickboxing specialist Ayanda Zwane, whilst the co-main event witnesses the return of the one and only Martin the Punisher Van Staden, who takes on fellow veteran Hanru the Bully Boda. EFC 118 from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
All right, let's now bring in Makwe Masilela, as always, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Good chatting to you, Makwe. You've got thoughts on what equity properties, the Equity Property Fund interim results, as well as local and global markets, right?
Yes, Ashraf, and afternoon to you and to the listeners. Remember, Equities is in the logistic property market in SA and UK. They have a portfolio value of 28.3 billion. The guys delivered growth of 5.6% in SA and 7.4% in the UK portfolio as a result of rent reviews and robust fundamentals, with 98.6% of rental income derived from A-grade tenants, and they've got 0 vacancies. And the gross property revenue was up 62%, profits as headline earnings per share up 17.7%, and the dividend per share up nicely 1.7%. And Ashraf, it seems unlikely that the Fed chair will win another big interest rate cut from his policy committee, so long as the labor market holds up. Markets are waiting for more signals on Chinese stimulus measures, as the latest announcement largely underwhelmed. Chinese officials will be holding a press conference this Saturday to outline plans for more fiscal stimulus. And we started the session looking ahead to the key U.S. consumer inflation data that was likely to factor into the outlook when it comes to interest rates, and markets were into something of a holding pattern before inflation numbers got released. And when released, those numbers were hotter than expected, and that weighed on stocks, yields, and dollar. And also there's indication of slowing down when it comes to the labor market, but the JSE remained positive, helped by our financials and resources. And we saw our August manufacturing falling by 1.2%, our mining product production data going up by 0.3%, and oil is sitting up, underpinned by a spike in fuel demand as a hurricane barreled into Florida, with Middle East supply risk also in focus. Brent is up 1.6% at $78 a barrel, and after 6 sessions of losses, the yellow metal recovered. That's after that hotter than expected inflation. Gold is up 0.8% at 2,629. Platinum is up 1% at 960. The rand firmed almost 0.5% at 17.54 against the US dollar, 22.89 against the pound, and 19.18 against the euro.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, well, thanks for that, Mark. Let's now move on to the conversation we had earlier on around the pronouncements of Julius Malema. So he spoke today on a whole range of issues, including the elective conference coming up at the end of the year. But let's pick some of the thoughts that he said, right, with our guest, and we'll do this. And I want to also, and I understand as well that there are many people wanting to comment about this. I think many people picking out the comments about Naledi Pandor, but that's not all. A whole lot of other thoughts may come through. But my guest, political analyst Nsaleko Breakfast, appreciate your time. As always, thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Right. So you said lots of things, Julius Malema, that is. I'm going to perhaps leave it to you to decide and pick maybe 3 of the most significant pronouncements and give us your thoughts on that.
Just to set the scene for your listeners, I think Julius Malema and the EFF, they are trying their level best to recover from the blow that they've suffered after they've gone separate ways with Floyd Shivambu. So the party is trying to refine its ideological position, trying to reassess the branches that are in good standing, given the fact that it is approaching to the upcoming conference that will be held in December. As you know, that every 5 years they hold conferences to elect their leaders. But I think also there are some gaps that they want to bridge, maybe to circumvent another threat, that might pose danger to the party of being left by someone who is trusted, so to speak. So we were talking about issues of policy, for instance, the issue of land reform, how the EFF feels let down by the powers that be for failing to amend the constitution. As you know, that there are different understandings and interpretations in that regard.
Okay, let's talk about, if you made the point they needed to reassure their own electorate about their own standing, particularly coming out of the last election where they did not perform well at all, and they've now lost some significant members, right? Was Julius Malema, was he able to convince the electorate of the future and the strength of the EFF?
Yes, the EFF has had a downward electoral trajectory. I think for the first time, actually, since its inception, and I think it also showcases the fact that the ushering in of Umkhonto weSizwe, because I think also it has been affected by that, especially in KZN, because that was the geopolitical battleground that Umkhonto weSizwe rose to prominence, but also took away a lot of votes from the EFF. Some of the votes of ANC members who are discontent of the way things are within the ANC and in government. Had it not been for Umkhonto weSizwe, maybe they would have voted for the EFF, but because of Umkhonto weSizwe, they did not vote for the EFF. But also Malema, in his report, he indicated that, something along the lines that branches that have not ensured that they assist the EFF to garner votes will not be regarded as being in good standing. But yeah, I mean, certainly the party has not done the way it should have in the recent.
What did he say about the MK party? Because it's interesting the point that you bring up that maybe they would have done better, but we don't really know that. But the bottom line to this, think of a rival mobile company that enters the market space, and within a short time they take over market share, and that's really what the MK party has done of both the EFF as well as the ANC, right? So in that case, one can argue to say, well, what happened to the EFF's intelligence in terms of not being able to be aware of a growing trend in KZN in particular? Clearly they've fallen short. What therefore did he say about the MK party now?
Well, we are talking about the intelligence of the EFF, why it failed to intercept this threat.
Exactly.
Maybe the question is, was there any intelligence operation in the first place? But anyway, I say to that, you see, I think the EFF, in particular Julius Malema, the EFF was myopic. It was one-sided in the sense that they reached out to Jacob Zuma with the intention of joining forces to pose a serious threat to the Ramaphosa faction, because they have, I think, discomfort in terms of the way he does things and so on. But that has been a project gone wrong, I would argue, because that strategy has backfired to the EFF, so to speak, because the biggest loser has not only been the ANC, the biggest loser also has been the EFF. And I think also going forward, the EFF will be more cautious in terms of its relationship with the Umkhonto Sizwe. But in the bigger scheme of things, I think, the EFF really it was disappointed in terms of its performance. You remember they launched their manifesto in KZN at Moses Mabhida with the bank, with the hope that they will garner more votes in KZN, but they did not achieve their intended objective.
Regarding Naledi Pandor, Julius Malema made some interesting points, and the key word here is political engagement.
I think it was very diplomatic, the way he framed that, because as far as I am concerned, Naledi Pandor has instituted a civil claim. She has instituted a civil case against him because the assertion that he made that she was involved in soliciting money from VBS did not sit well with her. So I think Malema now talking about political engagement. He is sort of like avoiding the matter playing itself out in court. I don't think that she's going to back off.
But the point is, he doesn't come across well in that statement, right? Whichever words he used, he made an accusation against a leading member of the ANC, a leading statesman of our country, and then effectively now saying, and I'm paraphrasing now because I'm picking up from what he said. It's like, well, it's just political engagement. We're allowed to make comments, and it's for her to deny it. So, in essence, he's saying he got it wrong.
Of course, and politicians, it's common knowledge that they are exempted from being charged when making assertions in Parliament. But when you make statements like that outside Parliament, then you can be sued. So I think he was a bit irresponsible for that, and I don't know how the judgment will go, but I think the person who has instituted the civil claim is within a right to demand accountability from Julius Malema.
Okay, lastly, and picking up again from his point about political engagement, he then continues talking about John Steenhuisen, the Minister of Agriculture, but also the leader of the DA, and referring once again to his qualifications and then choosing people of similar qualification, and then making the point about, being an organization led by white people for white people. The point I want to make is, do you find that he's spending too much time talking about the DA and not enough time about a vision for the EFF? Because that's what it comes across to me.
Well, you must remember the DA is in the GNU. It is part of the arrangement. So the EFF also is part of the Black Caucus. I think is trying to punch some holes there. But of course, if anyone has broken the law, that person must be brought to book. And it is the role of the opposition to hold the executive institution, because John Steenhuisen is part of the executive institution. So it's the role of opposition parties to hold them to account. And Julius Malema is within his right to do it. But Steenhuisen is not the only minister. Of course, two wrongs don't make a right. Who has sort of like tried to deviate from the policies of government in terms of appointing people who don't meet certain requirements. There are also other ministers from the ANC and so on,
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Intikalelo Breakfast, political analyst talking about the EFF. And here you are, listening to us having this conversation. Are you convinced, only on the basis of today, are you convinced that the EFF's pitch for your support moving forward is convincing enough for you to give them their support coming up to the electoral conference and beyond, with the local election coming up pretty soon?
Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
The Leopards and Taifa Stars have a big battle in the top of the table clash. DRC is only interested in 3 points to maintain their winning rhythm, while the East Africans also want victory to sustain their unbeaten run in Group H. This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the journey to Morocco, DR Congo versus Tanzania on Thursday, 10 October at 6 p.m. Live everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Sea Point, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 Rand, with an additional 100,000 Rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, we touched on the issue of the police officer conspiring to eliminate, 4, 5, 6 people as part of a whole insurance payout. We'll talk about that and the mind of the criminal with Professor Nirmala Gopal coming up after 5 o'clock. So listen out for that. It's Cyber Security Awareness Month. We need to touch on that. Again, you need to be reminded about the pluses of the cyber age that we live in, but also the downfalls and therefore the need for security around understanding all of that. With me is Doreen McQuena, who is the CEO of CyberSec Clinique, to talk to us about just that cyber security. Doreen, appreciate your time. You're now connected to the National Pulse.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon to all your listeners.
Thank you. Now, the issue of cybersecurity has been ongoing, but on the other hand, the issue of cyber usage
Yes.
and digital usage is now growing unabated around the world, isn't it?
True, definitely. I mean, we need to understand that, with every day we keep on having new technologies, the emergence of new technologies also bring a lot of cyber criminals. We have a lot of cyber crimes, and I can tell you for a fact that new ransomware and phishing activities and measures are being produced every day to target unsuspecting consumers. So it's very important for us and the rest of, from different multi-stakeholders to make sure that we do understand what is cybersecurity and we know how to implement it within our household and within our companies as well.
So therefore, what should we do?
Well, with cybersecurity, we need to understand that the internet is a decentralized network, meaning that everyone has access to it, and the internet cannot be governed. Hence, we have we have things like internet governance. It's a multi-stakeholder collaboration that ascertain that different companies and different stakeholders come together to make sure that the internet is actually governed in a manner that does not impose censorship. So the first thing that companies need to make sure that they do not fall, in the trick of cyber criminals is to have strong cyber resilience policies. You need to make sure that you understand what is your password policy, what is bring your own device, how does the firewall work. You need to make sure that the configurations are done correctly. But more than anything, cybersecurity, it all comes together to human element. Do we do enough trainings? Do we train our staff? I can ask you, how many times do you receive cybersecurity training this year alone? So everything comes back to the human element of it. Do we know what happens when you click on a phishing link? Do you know what is a denial of service attack? What is a ransomware? So we need to train employees that they understand how to secure themselves online. And more than anything, we also have an issue of digital literacy as well. So we also need to talk about that.
So who needs to do the training? Because, when you say employees, as we know, there's a 40% unemployment rate in that country, which means 40% of people don't fall into that category anyway, right? And then those others who are employers could be employers of small businesses, and there's no way they're going to get into any form of training. They just don't have it. So therefore, what is your advice to, both the companies that you talk about as well as individuals? What practically, realistically can we do?
There's a positive trend in employee cybersecurity awareness trainings in South Africa, but there's still a room for improvement, with 7% not training employees and about 32% training employees. So we need to drill it down to having a simple learning management solution within your environment that enforces employees, to train on cybersecurity. But everything drills down to the board of directors. It drills down to management. How do they view cybersecurity? Is cybersecurity still a technical function, or it's a function that belongs to IT, or it's a function that the entire organization needs to be aware of?
And what's your answer to that? Would it be the last one?
We have systematic issues when it comes to cybersecurity in South Africa. Most companies, especially, as seniors, don't see cybersecurity as a need. They see it as an afterthought. So we still have that issue of identifying what is important. Right now we have an issue of data governance. Data is literally the new currency right now. So if we do not take care of our data, obviously our systems are going to be shut down, because they're going to try to hack us every now and then. So everything boils down to awareness, cybersecurity month, and training employees.
And if you can answer this, how big is a problem of cybersecurity, either anecdotally or maybe one statistic that you can share with us very quickly?
We are in a dire situation right now. Yesterday, I was actually on Twitter, and I noticed that there is a page that promotes things that are being done on the dark web. I noticed that there are a couple of government entities which are, which they want to hack. So what they do is they literally auction us, and to the highest bidder, they hack us. They hack these government institutions, and they hack all these e-commerce stores. So we have a big issue in South Africa. If you look at the IT index when it comes to cybersecurity, we are literally number 73 in the world globally. So we need to relook the way we view cybersecurity. We shouldn't only focus on it on cybersecurity related months. It should be an everyday thing that we do. It should be embedded on our daily lives.
Okay, number 73 doesn't sound good at all, not at all.
No.
Doreen Mokoena, let's leave it at that, CEO of CyberSec Clinique. Check her out, but also maybe just be very aware that as the growing involvement in using cyber connectivity and data, similarly, then the robber is not just the robber in the street, but there's different sorts of robbers, and you need to be aware of that. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg Coase.
Thank you, Ashraf. Efforts to check Spaza shop compliance and hurricane leaves millions without power in Florida. Good day to you. The Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, says they're working on deploying intelligence to check the compliance of all Spaza shops in Gauteng. This after the death of 5 children in Soweto due to suspected food poisoning bought from a foreign-owned Spaza shop over the weekend. Their memorial service is expected to take place tomorrow, while the mass funeral service is set to take place on Sunday in Soweto. The Minister says this is becoming a serious concern.
We can't just leave it to parents and leave it to schools. We just have to do the profile of all these areas and the owners of these businesses and so on, while checking each and every incident. Surely we're going to get to the bottom of this and deal with it decisively and once and for all.
Meanwhile, the Gauteng Health Department says some of the matric learners who were earlier admitted to hospital for suspected food poisoning are expected to be discharged. The learners fell ill while on a matric camp. Department spokesperson Mutaletale Modiba.
They are having this matric camp at one of the schools in the district. So they ate something in the morning and it looks like whatever that they ate had an effect on them, because all of them started complaining of stomach cramps. 73 are being treated at the hospital, and then 1 was taken to a private facility. What is good is that they are all doing well. So in fact, just a minute ago when I was talking to the CEO of the facility, he confirmed that they will start discharging some of them because they're fairly stable, so they can be discharged to go home.
The public protector and her impeached predecessor, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, took each other on in Parliament earlier today. Mkhwebane started by describing Gweleka Gcaleka's explanation to one of her questions as nonsensical. She wanted to know about the security information pertaining to the current CEO in the office of the public protector, Thandi Sibanyoni. However, Gcaleka hit back by saying Mkhwebane should stop acting if she is beyond reproach because she happens to be an MP now.
The person has to do that. My address cannot be alluded to as nonsensical. Parliament doesn't give anyone unfettered powers to be disrespectful to the next person. I am the public protector and office bearer, and I'm an officer of the court, being an admitted advocate. We owe one another mutual respect. It cannot be. Advocate Mkhwebane cannot do what she did during the induction of parliamentarians to lead a disruption of the PPSA presentation led by myself.
A service for the late Rema Church leader Pastor Ray Macaulay will be held at the church in Randburg, Johannesburg this evening. He passed away at the age of 75 on Tuesday. He founded the church in 1979. He'll be remembered for his role in South Africa's political and social transformation during the late years of apartheid. Pastor Brett Pretorius.
We have the vigil service taking place where it's more of a comfort service, and we'll be spending time together and praying together with the family and with the loved ones. And then the second vigil will take place next week on the 17th. And that will be more of an honoring service, especially the pastors and, those that are involved in the ministry and the sons of the ministry. And it's during that time we're just going to honor Pastor Ray. And then, of course, we have the funeral taking place then on the Saturday.
At least 3 million people have been left without power in the U.S. state of Florida after Hurricane Milton swept through the region overnight. At least 4 people were killed as a result of tornadoes that struck ahead of Milton, making landfall on the state's Gulf Coast. Sharon Bryce Peace reports.
The storm brought heavy rain, flash flooding and winds in excess of 160 kilometers per hour, knocking out power to millions in Florida. But according to Governor Ron DeSantis, while the storm was significant, it was not the worst-case scenario as officials had predicted. Over 450 millimeters of rain fell in certain areas, while punishing winds tore roofs off, downing trees and power lines. Emergency services are assessing the damage and conducting response and recovery efforts, urging people to remain indoors. The storm saw a number of tornadoes touching down prior to Milton's landfall, and the number of fatalities, currently at 4, is expected to rise. Sherwin Ricepeace, SABC News, New York.
The top story, the police minister says they're working on deploying intelligence to check the compliance of all Spaza shops in Gauteng. That's SAFM News, I'm Greg Goss.
In your sports this hour, Bafana chase key win in AFCON qualifiers, and Sinner says Nadal retirement, tough news for tennis. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Edenvale, queuing towards Kilulis interchange. Rivonia Road in Morningside has a crash reported at South Road. The N1 northbound in Midrand, queuing towards Olifantsfontein Road. And Paul Kruger Street northbound in Pretoria has a crash reported after Lavender Road. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle after the Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. The M4 northbound queuing towards Virginia Airport. The N3 eastbound has a crash reported at Peacevale, and the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck reported before Market Road exit. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Gerwel Drive southbound queuing towards Voortrekker Road. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. The M5 southbound slow moving towards Kromboom Road exit. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. With your traffic updates, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
For 18 years, Kumbulekaya has been fostering healing through forgiveness and reconciliation.
Are you asking me that? Yes. I grew up without a mom.
So what happened to your family?
What family? You are my family. What happened to you?
Witness as families forgive one another and reunite after a long time. Catch the new season of Kumbulekaya on SABC1 every Wednesday at 9 p.m.
The 2024 Health Excellence Awards, hosted by Cliniques Health Group and the South African Clinician Scientist Society, is calling for nominations. This is your chance to recognize exceptional doctors, specialists, and medical professionals who are making an impact. The celebration of the 4th Annual Health Excellence Awards will take place on 16 November 2024 at Emperor's Palace in Johannesburg. Visit www.healthexcellenceawards.co.za to enter your nomination before 20 October 2024.
EFC 118 promises to be one of the most scintillating fight nights in recent memory, with 2 standout matchups. Fresh off his incredible run in The Ultimate Fighter, Rody Roots battles for the interim featherweight strap against deadly kickboxing specialist Ayanda Zwane, whilst the co-main event witnesses the return of the one and only Martin the Punisher Van Staden, who takes on fellow veteran Hanru the Bully Boda. EFC 118 from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. I
think there's one or two people who have tried to send us pictures of where they are listening to the show from around the country, and some of them are not clear. Please do resend them. So wherever you are, in the country, around the world, what about a picture of yourself, or if not you, at least with your dial locked onto SAFM? Would love to see it, and you can do in 2 things. You can WhatsApp us, which is great, 0614 104 107. But also you can post it ideally on Twitter. Just tweet us on the X platform, and then tag SAFM Radio and tag myself. Do use the hashtag The National Pulse. You can also post it on and just tag SAFM Radio on Facebook. We will certainly pick it up. In fact, you can do it on Instagram as well. So, many ways to think about that one. Right. Comments on what for you moves the National Pulse today. We've looked at two significant issues. One has been the issue of the EFF media briefing with Julius Malema saying things that, some things are rather puzzling, I think, on a range of issues. But very importantly to come out of that is he convincing in terms of what he said on this range of issues, and is he convincing enough for you to give him your support, assuming you are an EFF supporter, keeping in mind they have an elective conference coming up at the end of the year, and then local elections comes up shortly, so they need to get very organised after what clearly for me would be seen as a rather dismal performance in the elections itself. The second issue that moves the National Pulse is the issue that we touched on earlier, which is the South African Police Service officer who's now been arrested for her alleged involvement in 6 murders, all insurance related, that saw her cash in 10 million rands, okay? So we chatted to the police services spokesperson earlier on, but now let's get the thoughts of Professor Nirmala Gopal, who is a professor of criminology at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Prof. Gopal, thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
You're most welcome, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. Well, it begs the question, what is it in terms of our psyche or our own national pulse that gets people to commit the type of crimes that we've just alluded to, which is, 6 people killed because of an insurance payout?
So, Ashraf, we all know that the levels of violence, and particularly murder, is very high, significantly high in South Africa. So in the first instance, we would classify that as murder. In the second instance, one of the drivers for criminology or criminality is greed. And it would seem to me in this particular incident or with this particular perpetrator, it could have been greed that was the motivating factor or the driver.
But also, if it's greed, clearly it would be if it's 10 million rands, right? Then the greed is to such a level that, one, the perpetrator would commit the ultimate crime of actually taking another person's life, in this case, 6 people's lives. But on the other hand, I would think that one of the motivators would be perhaps that they won't get caught, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about the previous, the Ndlovu, the very famous Ndlovu case, where she herself was eventually apprehended and sentenced. And it sounds to me like the latest case is almost like a copycat case. But remember, each time a perpetrator commits a crime, the last thing they think about is being caught, because in their heads, the way in which they plan and organize, they believe that it's foolproof. So they absolutely don't believe that they would be caught. So that would be one of the, for them, that would be the safeguard. I'm perpetrating this particular crime, and there's absolutely no way in which I'm going to be caught.
And help us understand this in terms of where you are as a professor of criminology. Is that really the case where people believe they won't be caught, or they believe, they won't be caught at all, or they believe that the odds favor them?
I think it would depend. It would depend on the kind of, perpetrator you're actually dealing with. It will also depend on the mental state of the perpetrators, for example. The ones who I would think, and from my experience and my own reading, etc., is that if there's high levels of anxiety in a person that drives them to commit a particular type of crime, I think in those, for them, there is a degree of fear that they would be caught. But I think if we understand the profile of the majority of our criminals, and especially those ones who are caught, is that there is, because they do it so clinically, and in that clinical premeditation, etc., the idea of being caught seldom ever occurs to them. So I think the large majority, actually, we can situate them in that category or cohort of we won't be caught.
Mm-hmm. So what then about us as people understanding the psyche of people who are criminals long before they are criminals? What I'm trying to say is, can we spot a criminal even at a very, very young age?
Yeah, so I think there's no criminal type, there's no criminal profile, but there are indicators in people that could give you some indication of a possible criminal pathway. Let's, for example, look at somebody who would commit mass murders. There's a possibility that the lifestyle of the person, where you would have journals written around how he or she wants to kill others. They may not necessarily have a violent temper, and you won't see it manifest itself, but they will be doing little things that are pointers, that indicate that this person is probably plotting, mass murders, for example. They may say things. And I think it takes a very astute and alert person to be able to understand that this particular person could be planning A, B, C, or D. Because, of course, there's no criminal type. There's no profile
so, for example,
a criminal.
if a parent, and I hate to say this, but if a parent spots even a young child of like 10 or 12 years old, right, either posting comments on social media or in he or her personal diaries, that just seems, or even on a piece of paper at home, that just seems completely out of the ordinary. Like, one day I will run the world and I will eliminate everybody. Are you suggesting that we must take that seriously already at that age?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we must.
And then what do we do?
Even when it comes to being, sorry, Ashraf, even when it comes to being cruel to animals, like kicking them around and not being afraid to burn their tails, now that's an indicator that this child could have some criminal or violent tendencies that eventually could end up in criminality.
And then what do we do, considering at that point they haven't done anything wrong? And I mean, no parent or grandparent wants to take anybody and get them for counseling long before there's a need for that, right? I mean, generally the tendency would be to err on the side of caution, to say, I'm sure they're going to be okay, they're just young.
Yeah, but I think you will have to look for patterns, see how often it repeats itself, usually. And if you see a recurrent pattern, then I think it's very critical for the parent or the caregiver, guardian, to have some kind of intervention. It can start as basic, at the most basic level, for example, getting a teacher or the counselor at school to speak to the child. It's important for the guardian or caregiver to share that information with someone that they feel safe.
And to go back to the issue of, that insurance payout, the 10 million rands with the 6 people being killed, right? How common is that sort of problem?
So I think in South Africa, that's not very common. We might believe it is because very recently, of course, we had the Ndlovu case. However, statistically, it would be quite insignificant if we look at, murders. But I think from a scientific perspective, it would be insignificant. But if we look at it through a humane lens, that would be too many. So while we're saying it's not common, it seems to be. It looks like it's going to increase in the in terms of the incidences that we will continue to see in the future. And the one thing that I want to add is that we are now seeing a new pattern emerging, and we are finding females engaging in this type of crime. Previously, it would be the domain of males.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's end by going back to the initial point that I brought up in a different way, right? That whatever their personal motivation, the one part you're saying these criminals don't believe they'll get caught. So that is a good enough motivation for them to continue doing so. But the other is, and we know we've got a high crime rate in our country. We also know we have low conviction rates, right? How much of that, the low conviction rate, also then becomes a motivator to say, actually, nothing will happen to me?
It's very, very likely, Ashraf. It's very likely because remember, I think then it does tie into the whole idea of I won't be caught. So I won't be caught, I won't be convicted because there won't be enough evidence. I will not leave evidence, a trail of evidence, etc. The justice system is not strong enough. So I think all of those ideas we can put into one basket that makes the perpetrator believe that I have this omnipotent presence and I won't be caught.
Okay, I appreciate you giving off your time, Professor Nirmala Gopal, Professor of Criminology at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Hopefully we'll talk on better news some other time down the line, right? Absolutely. By the way, talking about good news, lots of people commenting or sending us their pictures. Here's one, N4 to Middleburg in Mpumalanga. Lovely picture. But I don't have your name, and I'd love to give a shout out to your name. But thanks for that. And then Freddie, the truck driver, has sent a picture as well, which is great. I can certainly see that the dial locked onto SAFM. By the way, feel free to tweet about those pictures too, or just tag us, SAFM Radio. Here's another. I'm listening to SAFM from my car, driving from work. Nice and informative show, Ashraf. Please give me names, okay, so I can give your name a shout out. But I thank you for that, right? And there's maybe another one or two more just coming through, and I will read it out as soon as I can. Okay, let's just put that on pause for the moment, because what I'll do is we're going to talk about another important issue based upon the conversation we had earlier on that I think is really important around climate change and advocacy from advertising agencies in terms of pushing a certain narrative. It's important. Right after this.
Cultural Urban Festival Africa will conclude the weekend in style with an exhilarating brand of football. The City of Roses will vibrate as Bakhabane Bantwa battles it out with Amakhosi. This is the inaugural Kufa Cup. Who will conquer the 90 minutes at the Toyota Stadium in Bloemfontein? Witness the incredible Kufa Cup clash between Maruma Gallants and Kaizer Chiefs this Sunday 13 October at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. You can also catch it everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro, Spar, BP and Shell. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The Leopards and Taifa Stars have a big battle in the top of the table clash. DRC is only interested in 3 points to maintain their winning rhythm, while the East Africans also want victory to sustain their unbeaten run in Group H. This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the journey to Morocco, DR Congo versus Tanzania on Thursday 10 October at 6 p.m. Live everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Okay, and here's another interesting one. Indomizo Fuze from Richards Bay, listening on my way home. Love that. Lots of people commenting. Another one, we are listening from Durban, Mr. Mohammed. I'm a big fan of your show. We really enjoy it every day. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Mohammed. And there's another, I'm listening from Cape Town on my way from work via the Golden Arrows bus, and it comes from Katu Badana. And there's a picture of Katu as well. Great that you're doing that. Well, more. All appreciated. Really love what you do. Tell us where you're listening from, and if you can, send a picture of yourself listening or your dial locked onto SAFM. But also not just on WhatsApp, which you can do 0614 104 107. But if you wish to, tag us on social media, on the Twitter account of SAFM Radio, the X account, and the same on Facebook, please do just that. Right now. Earlier on, we spoke to Brandon Abednor, the head of the Pollution and Climate Change Program at the Centre for Environmental Rights, about the outcomes of the Clean Creatives South Africa report. And the context of all of that is climate change and what's happening. But linked to that, and around the Clean Creatives report, it exposes the deep entanglement of local creative agencies in enabling the fossil fuel industry to greenwash its image while contributing to dangerous climate change. What does all that mean? Giving a softer side to the fact that some big companies don't want to, continue doing certain things that may harm the climate, but they continue doing that anyway. So let's find out further about this with Stephen Horn, who's the country director at Clean Creatives South Africa. Stephen, appreciate your time. You were connected to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and to your listeners. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, first things first, I understand the Clean Creatives, which is where you are. You have a Clean Creatives pledge. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. So Clean Creatives is a global movement of advertising and PR agencies, as well as the individual creatives working in that industry and clients that commit to not working with fossil fuels. So the pledge is just simply a way of going to our website, which is cleancreatives.org, and there's a form, and you essentially you take a personal commitment, or on the behalf of your agency, that you will decline future work. So you won't renew existing contracts with fossil fuel companies. So that's essentially the pledge in a nutshell.
It's creative agencies, which are basically ad agencies for those who don't know, need to take a stand, is that what you're saying, and not work with companies that effectively engage in the damaging of our environment. Is that right?
That's completely right, and it's actually quite cool that this year on World Environment Day, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for the same thing. He said advertising agencies and PR agencies have been enablers to planetary destruction due to their work for fossil fuel clients, and he urged the agencies to ditch their clients. So this is very much, a growing movement globally, and people are realizing that the impacts of climate change, 2024 being the hottest year on record, the devastating floods and the effects we're feeling, they're only going to get worse and worse and worse, actually quite soon, I think faster than most people realize. And we're all kind of, our report points out, kind of living under a flood of greenwashing. And what greenwashing means is it's representing a company's image as more sustainable or environmentally friendly than it actually is. So the world's fossil fuel industry is contributing 3/4 of the carbon pollution that is heating up the planet and causing these dangerous effects, like the recent hurricanes in the U.S. And they are telling us, and they're advertising that they're reducing their emissions and they're on track to, get net zero by 2050. But as we've seen with the actual rebellion, for example, at Sasol's AGM last year, two of its biggest investors, institutional investors, Old Mutual and 91, actually pre-declaring there that they won't vote in favor of the company's climate resolution because it's simply been 2 decades of foot dragging, of lobbying to try and not enable these changes to come through. And what the key issue here is that we've got to price in the pollution. So polluters need to pay. And the PR and creative industry are helping, they're aiding and abetting and helping this polluting industry.
Let's bring it home then, in terms of this pledge that you refer to, right? You say it's global. So what percentage of agencies, in South Africa, have signed up for the pledge? What percentage of agencies globally have signed up for the pledge?
So the pledge was started in 2021, I believe, or 22 possibly, and we launched the local chapter in 2022. Yeah, so I think it's 21 when it was founded globally, and it's attracted over 1,000 agents, in fact 1,200 agencies. Some of these agencies are globe-spanning and have more than 1,000 employees. In South Africa, we have 68 agencies, including, for example, one of South Africa's most awarded large PR firms in Johannesburg, DNA Brand Architects. So there are some notable names. We've garnered quite a lot of support in the 1.5 years that we've been running. And every day we keep seeing more and more agencies wanting to come on board.
Okay, so it's interesting you brought up DNA Brand Architects. I mean, that's owned by Sylvester Chauke, certainly I know him, right? So that's one agency. What about the other big agencies in this country, and keeping in mind that there's Lourie's coming up next week, I think it is. So what I'm saying in terms of a national agency interaction, are you able to convince an entire national body for South Africa to commit to that? Have they done so?
That's a really good question, Ashraf. So interesting developments are happening. So globally you have this movement of fossil fuel advertising ban campaigns. So people trying to ban the advertising to wake people up to the reality of this link to fossil fuels to climate change. As an example, Total Energy is sponsoring AFCON, and the advert plays constantly on SAFM throughout the day. So people then think, Total Energy is a great company, they sponsor sports, but they're also building the world's largest heated crude oil pipeline in Uganda, which has been, called out for the climate impact it's going to have. So these fossil fuel advertising bans are popping up, and the local ban actually submitted a greenwashing complaint against Total Energies for misleading people about sustainable development claims for its partnership with Sandparks earlier this year. And the Advertising Regulatory Board upheld that complaint, showing that greenwashing is starting to be seen under scrutiny and held up to scrutiny in South Africa. So we hope that
here's the last thing. We're on to news time. Just a quick answer to this one here. I hear what you're saying, and all of it makes a lot of sense. The other thing that makes sense is that all organizations, you mentioned Total and many others too, they're all driven by bottom line profits, and they also want to ensure that their sustainability as a business is sustained. They don't want to do anything that will cause a discomfort to their bottom line and their profitability. How do we balance that out? That means, because if we follow the one line, we could probably, in one fell swoop, destroy industry after industry, because there's something wrong with so many industries. But what's your quick soundbite answer to that?
Well, I think it's we can't keep playing the balancing act card forever, and they've actually been lying to us. this industry has, as Brandon said earlier, knowingly lying to us for decades. And as regular citizens, we actually need to voice out. Even Desmond Tutu said to us, people of conscience need to take a stand against fossil fuels. So I think if he's onto it, we should be doing that.
Okay. Stephen Horn, Country Director at Clean Creatives South Africa. What do we do next? Maybe speak to the umbrella body for the advertising industry in South Africa. Made a note about it. We'll certainly get Temba to try and work on that one there. 5:30, here's the news headlines. Here's Greg Hose.
Thank you again, Ashraf. A quick look at the headlines of this half hour. Impeached public protector and EFF MP Busisiwe Mkhwebane has taken a swipe at incumbent Koleka Kaleka in Parliament today. The police minister says they're working on deploying intelligence to check the compliance of all spaza shops. And health workers in Gaza say more than 20 people have been killed and dozens wounded in the latest Israeli airstrike. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R24 westbound in Edenvale has a crash reported near the N12 highway merge. The N1 southbound in Veltevreden Park has a stationary vehicle reported after the Bears-Naudé Drive exit. The M1 southbound is slow moving through Kraan interchange towards Boysons. Santon Drive westbound slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive. Rivonia Road in Morningside has a crash reported at South Road in Pretoria. Eskom-Patleli Drive northbound has delays towards Mabopane Highway, and the N1 northbound slow moving towards the Garsfontein Road exit. In KZN, the M4 northbound queuing towards Virginia Airport, the N3 westbound queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 westbound has a stationary truck reported after Kato Ridge, the N3 westbound a stationary truck at Key Ridge, and Chris Hani Road westbound slow moving at the N2 highway. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound slow moving towards the R300 highway. Strandfontein Road southbound is slow moving towards Spine Road. Komiki Road northbound slow moving at Masipumalele. Main Road northbound is slow moving at St. James, and Marine Drive northbound in Milnerton slow moving towards Boundary Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Show me the bad news. There's no club football this week. The good news is there's international football this week. Let's talk football.
And we're looking forward to seeing how Bafana are going to perform against Congo. According to their head coach, Hugo Bruce, he's reiterated that he wants to see South Africa a better South Africa in the two matches against Congo, unlike what he saw in the opening two matches of the AFCON qualifiers against Uganda and South Sudan. The Belgian-born coach is raising the importance of guarding against complacency.
And I want to see the real South Africa. We didn't see the real South Africa in our last two games. I was not happy with the performance. I was happy with the results. A little bit less happy when I speak about the result against Uganda. I wanted to win that game. But we won, but two times we were lucky. So our performance was not what I expected. And I want to see another South Africa in the two games they are in front of us. And you know, this is a little bit normal in the way that, the last 2 years it was a good news show with Bafana. We played good, we had good results, we qualified for AFCON, we had the bronze medal. Then the game against Algeria in March. Against Nigeria, Zimbabwe, so everything was okay. And then, it's a little bit normal that you have a little decompression.
So, he talks about, I've heard of a phrase called the new South Africa. Remember, he talks about the real South Africa, right? Why are we seeing the not so real South Africa in the last, two games, right?
Yeah, in the last two games, I guess. From those two games, South Africa now has 4 points from a possible 6, which is not bad, but he feels that they can do better. If you remember those games, I think one of them was a draw.
Goals.
Yeah,
both
and
games,
then one of them was a draw, and one of them, I think they won, and last minute thing. So, he's basically just saying, listen, let's go back to the identity of Bafana under him as a coach, because obviously this is an improved Bafana side, and I think one thing to note is that they played those games without Ronwen Williams, and with the results that they got, as much as it's not like the poorest of results, he's just saying he'd like to see them performing well on the field as a whole. And now Williams is back in the squad, so I guess that will be extra confidence for the team.
And I mean, just remind us again, who are they playing and what do they need to do?
They play in Congo. And they would want to win, obviously.
And that's tomorrow.
Match. That is tomorrow, and that is at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium.
If they score in the last minute, there has to be a winner, not an equalizer. I mean, that's the bottom line.
That's exactly
all right,
what he's saying.
You have more to say, right? Tell us more.
Yeah, still talking about the AFCON qualifiers. Zimbabwe beat Namibia 1-0 in the AFCON qualifier at Orlando Stadium. Kamabili scored a first half penalty, and that was in the 34th minute. Then still staying with football, there's Nations League returning tonight, pick of the week. It's Italy versus Belgium. Italy currently leads the group with 6 points, having won both of their opening games, while Belgium sit in second place with 3 points. With the win and a loss, Israel remains at the bottom of the log without a point, and they take on France, while England face Greece, and those matches get underway around 8:45. Then just moving on to tennis, world number one, Jannik Sinner says that Rafa Nadal's announcement to retire is tough news for the tennis world. Nadal has announced earlier that he will retire from tennis at the end of the season. The 38-year-old will represent Spain in his final appearance at next month's Davis Cup finals in Malaga. And with him retiring now, he's ending a career which saw him win 22 Grand Slam titles. And according to Sinner, he says that he was lucky to see an athlete like him, and he's very grateful for the fact that he was also able to get some sort of advice from him as a whole. But talking about Sinner, he beat Daniil Medvedev 6-1 and 6-4 in their Shanghai Masters quarterfinal encounter. And next up, he's taking on Thomas Mashak, who upset third seed Carlos Alcaraz 7-6 and 7-5 for his maiden ATP 1000 semi-final. In terms of rugby, a tough test for SA United Rugby Championship franchises this weekend as they play abroad for the first time this season. Benetton hosts the Sharks in Italy in the first of the 3 matches on Saturday, which will be followed by Edinburgh and DHL Stormers, while Ospreys face the Vodacom Bulls. Then the Emirates Lions takes on the Dragons on Sunday in Wales, and the results have an influence on the log standings, where on 6 points it only separates, or there's only 6 points that's separating second place and 13th place as a whole. Well, that's it. It's a wrap from my side.
Okay, and tomorrow you're going to wear your Bafana top, right?
Definitely.
And if I don't wear it, it's only because I don't have one. So I'm just shouting out loud.
I've
had an older one, but I'm happy to wear the new one.
Yeah, you can still wear that old one.
I will. That's the World Cup 2010 World Cup one.
Yeah.
I know where it is. I do know where it is.
Please do look for it. Yeah. Let's support Bafana.
Point made. There we are. Right. Okay, more sport tomorrow, of course, with Bafana and that Congo game, right?
Those who love the game say chess is the gymnasium of the mind. The world's top chess players will showcase exciting fast chess played among 6 teams in search of the ticket to the ultimate glory. This is the 2nd season of the Tech Mahindra Global Chess League. Catch the Global Chess League 2024 action from 3 to 12 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Blue Sharks want to dive deep and secure 3 points to keep the 2nd position in Group C. While the Zebras of Southern Africa are searching for their first win, they want to escape from the basement. Who will enjoy the final whistle dance of celebration? This is the Total Energies AFCON 2025 qualifier. Experience the journey to Morocco. Cape Verde versus Botswana on Thursday, 10 October at 6 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Tell you what, there's a flood of people, and I use the word flood, of people who've posted pictures and comments on our WhatsApp text messages as well, telling us where they are and sending pictures, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to read them out, give you a shout out in a few minutes' time. But for now, we've got Jimmy Moyaha as well, as always, hosting the SAFM Market Update. Jimmy, good chatting to you as always. What's your moving market today?
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening to the listeners. We're going to be looking at Sasria. Sasria has found a way to ensure that they keep insuring businesses. They are, of course, the SOC that provides insurance services to both the public as well as other businesses. They gave us their results in an integrated report today. We're going to be looking at that report, trying to make sense of the performance of Sasria over the last year. Obviously, with all of the things that have been happening, a lot of claims have gone through the insurance industry, so we're going to look at that company and see how they're performing. We've also got a conversation with Equitas. They're a real estate investment trust, a REIT listed on the JSE. They gave us a 6-month update for the 6 months ended August 2024. We're going to speak to the Chief Financial Officer of that business and see how they're keeping along. And then we've got a conversation as part of what we spoke about yesterday. We did this in our masterclass yesterday around insolvency versus liquidation, and so I thought I'd bring in a specialist. Today we've got a conversation with the head of business rescue, at Worksman's Attorneys, around that and just understanding the differences between the insolvency, the business rescue and liquidation processes. And then because it's Thursday, we've got an SME to speak to on a Thursday. Today's SME is a company called MyGlass. We're going to be speaking to them and getting a sense of what it is that they do. Before we get to our show, the markets have had a better day than yesterday, I'd say, with Asian markets all finishing in the green, including Shanghai and the Hong Kong markets. European markets all in the red. The CAC 40 was down 1/3%, the DAX 1/3%, and the FTSE down 0.1%. When we look at the performance of US markets at the moment, they are also slightly in the red, with the S&P down about 0.5%, the NASDAQ about 0.5%, and the Dow as well around 0.1% in the red there. South African markets had a much better day. Industrials were the only sector that was in the red, that was down 0.2%, but financials was up 0.5% or so, and resources up 0.8%. As a result, your top 40 was up 4 basis points, so 0.04%, and the all share up 7 basis points. Not very positive, but flat is better than in the red at this point. The rand doing much better against all the majors, gaining back some ground against the dollar, still above 17.50 though, so sitting at 17.53 against the dollar. 22 rand 88 cents against the British pound. €1 will cost you 11 rand and 19 cents, and $1 Australian will still cost you 11 rand and 80 cents. The Brent crude price, when we look at commodities, is back towards that $80 level. It's at $78 a barrel. The gold price, $2,620. The platinum price and palladium pricing are improving, but platinum still below $1,000 an ounce there. We're going to look at those details a little later on. We've also got a look into the US inflation numbers that came out around 2:30 this afternoon. So we've got lots to dig into, but we'll be back a little later on. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
Well, before I let you go, let's do our masterclass on a phrase we hear so often, your fiduciary duty. Tell me about that.
In simple terms, it is the obligation and the responsibility that you have to do what is in the best interests of those you serve. So if you think about the position of a director, they are a custodian for a company, and their obligation is to do what is in the best interest of that company and the company's shareholders, not what is in their own best interests.
Okay, got that. Sounds pretty straightforward to me, but I know it's not. Thank you for that. Enjoy your show. 6 to 7 more on all things finance and business coming up with Jimmy Moyaha. Let's get to some of the voice notes as well. By the way, just before I do the voice notes, there's a range of people just commenting about where they're listening in from. So Erasmus in Globo in Durban listening to the show. Mzu in Dima. Saying, Ashraf listening, Eastern Cape listening at work, preparing to go. Great show as usual, my favorite station. That's really kind of you. And many of you sending pictures, which is fabulous, of yourself or the dial locked into SAFM. Mzu in Dima. I've got this from Mavava, listening from Sudwala Funscapes in Mbombela. And there's another, I'm Mzu in Dima. In Patterson, Eastern Cape, listening at work, preparing to go Great show. So there we are. Thank you for that one. And there's more. Okay, let me do this. Let me play some voice notes, and I'll get to some of the others too in just a moment or so. Right, no surprises. The police issue and Malema are the dominant stories that moves the national pulse today.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, I think Malema is confused. He's the one who refused to join GNU. Remember, they had unreasonable demands, but now he's blaming the ANC for having the GNU. This guy is confused, man. Thanks from Andil in Willowvale, Eastern Cape.
Well, is he confused, or is that a tactical change of position? Isn't that?
Hi, Ashraf and the SAFM listener. Why it must take in the police for so long to investigate in some matters? I mean, they supposed like maybe to be, realize that, I mean, something is wrong here by that, I mean, policewoman, whereby like, his family, they just keep on dying, and then all of a sudden he keep on collecting the money. Even the bank supposed like maybe to inform the police, because I think he's using the bank where like they depositing that money. Why it must it taking so long for the people to die before the police can? The intelligence police, like they just like doing their own things instead of doing like the right job. Here at the Kurle.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, there must be some sympathy for police when there's rampant crime. They can only do so much. Often, it's the people who are close to the killers who knows about it, who doesn't say a thing about it. Okay, for example, so why should the killers become killers in the first place? Like we know, if crime is rampant in our country, even now, violent crime, that means in so many homes there are people who are living in those homes who are killers. So how come we don't know about it? Like, meaning the families are too scared to talk about them. So just think about that too, right? Okay, another Malema.
Ashraf, SAFM listeners, good afternoon. It's Ali here in Western Cape. Ashraf, listening to Malema, seems like the CIC is suffering from economic amnesia. He is busy talking about Mbalula, GNU, and Abu Ramaphosa, Palapal. But he haven't mentioned anything about the collapsed progressive caucus of black politicians. I think the man is suffering from amnesia, really. Thank you.
Well, I mean, here's my quick thought. If he forgot, I don't think he forgot. I think he omitted, and there's a reason behind it. It's pretty simple, isn't it?
Whereby you can just say...
How's it, Ashraf? This is Sabata from Durban. Ashraf, I've never heard of such nonsense in my life. I mean, if you are going to say that it's political engagement, we know what political engagement political engagement is. There's no such that, I mean, you insult a person like that, then you call it a political engagement. No, you need to be taught a lesson.
Well, we certainly have a new word in our vocabulary, a new phrase, political engagement.
Hi, Ashraf. Ashraf, about that police woman, it has nothing to do with police recruitment policy. Like politicians, too many politicians who have been involved in corruption. They were not involved in criminal activities before they become politicians. Maybe most of them. It's just that one sees the opportunity when he's inside the system. So I'm saying this because I know that too many people will use this opportunity to criticize SAPS services, which is unfair.
Thanks for that, Chemba. Well, I think it's okay to ask the question. Even I asked it, but yes, you can't hold them accountable for everything. I completely concur with that.
Yeah, Ashraf, the incident of the police out in Limpopo having killed 6 people and the incident of 18 people being killed out in the 60s, those are the indications of your lawless country, so to speak. So therefore, This is flagrant disregard of the law. They do this with impunity, and they know that the so-called parole is going to come up, and there are no deterrent measures in our criminal justice system, unfortunately. So, yeah, when you talk about death penalty, then we are being warded off, if you like. Thank you, Willie and Kuma.
Well, I mean, your point about deterrent and impunity, I don't think you're wrong, and sadly so.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Today I had a serious headache when I heard the speech of Julius Malema, for the simple reason that I can't believe that in this day and age we still have leaders that are stuck in the past in outdated and backward political ideologies like socialism and communism, of which, for his own information, if his listening failed dismally in the former Soviet Union, in China, in Venezuela, in Vietnam, in East Germany, etc., etc. To industrialize means to invest more in higher education. For instance, we have geologists in this country, but they're not receiving funding to actually make explorations in the ocean so we can drill for our own oil. So to change ownership from private property to state-owned property is not to industrialize, for his own information. Thanks, Lionel Woodbank.
Okay, got that line. I think you've said a lot and many can digest that. Gabriel sending a picture from Polokwane saying, don't worry, Ashraf, I'll be rocking my 2008 Bafana shirt. Okay, and I think it's a very, very impressive shirt. I can tell you now. There's another one listening from in the car from the office in Pretoria from Theo. Thanks for that, Theo. And there's more. In fact, I'll read out one or two more, but we'll get to our winning feature right after this.
The wait is finally over, and we can safely say that Tropica Island of Treasure is back to serve you some really great entertainment. Tune into S3 from the 28th of September to cheer on the 7 teams who will be vying to win a shared prize of 1 million rand, a brand new car each, and become the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure Season 11. Fancy 50,000 bucks? Predict the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure, and you might be sipping that cold, refreshing Tropica all the way to the bank. Follow at MyTropica and at SABC3 for more information. Channel your inner champion with Tropica Island of Treasure. Starts Saturday the 28th of September at 6:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up. Four dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Seapoint, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 rand, with an additional 100,000 rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up. Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Some other listeners on the National Pulse: Concrete Day driving from Joburg to Durban. Peter listening in Berea in Durban. I got that picture, Peter. And then there's one from Sea Point, no name, Sea Point Beach Road, Cape Town. What a beautiful place. That's where the SABC studios are. Probably the best view you can broadcast from. I have no question about that. Let's talk about the winning feature now with Tanya Jakeni, who's a grade 11 learner from the Berthery English Private School, which is based in Tembisa. That's on the East Rand, so Ekurhuleni region. Tanya, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Now, we're talking to you because we talk to winners on this feature. And you, I understand, represented South Africa at the Germany International Debate Forum 2024. Tell me about that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Can I introduce myself first?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. I am Tanya Jakeni, a seasoned debater, international orator, and passionate advocate for effective communication. As the proud recipient of the third place award out of 60 nations in the esteemed International English Debate Competition held in Germany, I have had the privilege of articulating perspectives on diverse platforms. As the renowned philosopher Aristotle once said, "The art of persuasion is the art of ruling the minds of men." I am thrilled to share my insights and experiences with SAFM's esteemed audience today. With a background spanning debate, public speaking, and, of course, international diplomacy, I have honored my ability to engage, inspire, and inform. Therefore, I am very, very excited. As Nelson Mandela aptly put it, the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. I'm eager to share my journey, lessons learned, and the impact of debate on personal growth and, of course, global citizenship.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the topic that you had to present or debate on. What was it?
We actually had two motions for the competitions, therefore they were divided for different days. The first topic that we talked about was the impact of technology in medical laboratories. The second motion that we addressed was God or ancestors, choose one, we cannot go both ways. So it was a scientific related topic and religious based topic.
Okay, that's fantastic. I understand that you, and in fact, I mean, you didn't just represent yourself, you represented South Africa, right? So, and you finished what, in the top 3?
Yes.
But that's fabulous. How do you feel about that?
Thank
I mean,
you.
that you could be in the top 3, coming from Tembisa, representing your country amongst, what, about, I think, 60, 70 countries in the world, and you finish in the top 3?
Actually, I have got mixed emotions. I have goosebumps. I feel proud, declamapostica, enthusiastic, extraordinary, jubilant. But at the same time, I feel like hard work paid off actually. But at the same time, I'm a bit emotional about it because honestly, I never thought I would be from Africa to the world. Yes. That's how I'm feeling. I'm having mixture of emotions at the moment.
Well, we're glad that you are from Africa to the world and you've just done that. I mean, you talk about yourself as a seasoned debater. What, and you know, this feature is called winning, right? What for you gives you the edge? What do you think gives you something that when you're debating with others, you stand out and you do better than most?
Actually, I would say that, you know, when you are dedicated and extraordinary, determined in what you do, and it's your passion, it's what you're passionate most about it, I think it just reveals itself. And I would say the fact that I can stand on stage, articulate my arguments in a very professional and civilized manner, my researching skills as well, and how I address the audience, it makes me stand out. And I would label myself as a best speaker, of course, especially the first best speaker, because I'm very good at grasping people's attention and all that. So my voice, my confidence, how I manage everything, how I do everything with passion, love, dedication, and determination. It makes me stand out. That's the reason why I was able to stand out of 16 nations abroad, not just in Africa, but in a global stage.
Well, you certainly have. Okay, we're on to news time. So one quick answer from you, very quick one. What for you is your purpose?
I beg your pardon?
What for you is your life purpose?
Okay, I have got many life purposes, but I'll just highlight. I would say my life purpose is me living, striving for the best, seeing an African child prospering a Ferrari in a human form, mainly changing the African continent, uniting the African leaders, and turning this world into a developed world. Honestly, that is my purpose, and that is what I usually strive for, and that is what I usually live for in most cases.
Well, there you are. You're the Ferrari in a human form, and I will not forget that, Tanya Jakeni. Well done to you, a grade 11 learner from the Berthery English Private School based in Tembisa, finishing third, representing South Africa in a global debating competition in Germany with many, many countries in the world. And you winning, and we're glad to talk to you as a winner. Absolutely. That's the show. I can look at my entire team are saying, okay, we're all ready to go. I think Ntando's saying like, okay, I'm tired. Probably the same would apply to Keys and Temba and Vusani, all making up this team. We'll do it again tomorrow. It is the National Pulse coming up 3 to 6. Don't miss that. Right now, it's 6 o'clock. Here's the news with Greg.
Mkhwebane clashes with public protector in Parliament in efforts to check spaza shop compliance. Good evening. Impeached public protector and EFF MP Busisiwe Mkhwebane has taken a swipe at incumbent Kholeka Gcaleka in Parliament. She was Mkhwebane's deputy before Mkhwebane was impeached by the National Assembly. Mkhwebane didn't take kindly to Gcaleka referring to her as an impeached convicted MP regarding